Chapter 1576. What's going on? Beat them back. Don't let any arrows threaten us. More and more arrows rained down on the trenches. Some of the black cavalry soldiers had already been hit by arrows. Although none of them were killed, more than a dozen soldiers were injured. Some of them even had their arms injured. This made it impossible for them to continue using their firearms in a short period of time. As Ba Daojiang shouted, a look of indignation appeared on his face. However, he didn't have a better idea. Tonight, the soldiers of the three provinces were rushing over without regard for their lives. Although the firearms in their hands were very powerful, they had limited manpower. There were less than 500 people, and they needed to guard the four directions. It was destined that the counterattack they could make was very limited. Fire 2 waves of grenades in a row. Beat back the enemies that are close to us. Captain Howling Blade had somehow arrived at Ba Dao River and started shouting. Then, a wave of grenades was thrown in all directions. Cries of agony were heard one after another. Many of the soldiers from the three provinces who wanted to approach them were killed. The situation was stabilized again. Sigh. A heavy punch fell from the sky. Seeing that they were charging fearlessly, the opportunity to defeat the enemy had appeared. However, it was indeed a pity that they had failed because of a wave of grenades. However, Wang Zhanjiang wasn't discouraged. Since they had the opportunity just now, he believed that they would have a second chance if they continued to charge. He continued to give orders. The entire army charged forward without stopping. The battle in the inner circle was in full swing. Outside the small courtyard, the sound of gunfire and cannons had attracted more and more civilians. The appearance of the civilians wasn't that sudden. After all, the same sound had been heard for 2 consecutive nights. Anyone who wasn't deaf could hear it. The difference was that although these people were worried for the first 2 nights, they didn't do anything. But now, the civilians were making a move. From all directions, more than 15,000 civilians rushed towards the small courtyard. General Kai Wanju, who was in charge of the security of the outer circle, didn't look nervous at all. Perhaps this was due to inertia. In front of the army, the civilians were just livestock that could be driven around at will. Men, set up the formation. Archers, get ready. If the commoners dare to come close, shoot them down. Kai Wanju, who was riding on his horse, said calmly. Compared to the civilians who didn't have much fighting power, he was much more fortunate than Wang Zhanjiang, who could die at any moment in the inner circle. Kai Wanju had a calm expression on his face, but if he knew that 1/10 of the 20,000 soldiers under him were cold vanguard warriors and thousands of new recruits had already been convinced by the cold vanguard warriors, he would not be able to remain so calm. As the saying goes, to catch bandits, first catch the ringleader. Kai Wanju didn't know that he had already become someone's target. Cheng Hu, the commander of the Cold Front Army's 1st Division and 1st Regiment, was currently hiding in the army, watching Kai Wanju's every move. Anyone who had been in the army knew that one was always the most powerful existence in an army. For example, in a company, if a company's first-grade officer died in battle, then the one to inherit their position would definitely be a platoon leader. Logically speaking, if the platoon-level officers all died in battle, the one who would inherit their positions would definitely be the platoon leader. This clearly showed the importance of this platoon leader. For Cheng Hu to be able to become the commander of an army's 1st Division and 1st Regiment, his ability was naturally not to be underestimated. Since he had his eyes on Kai Wanju, how could he escape from Cheng Hu's grasp when the enemy was in the open and Kai Wanju was in the dark? Attack! Seeing that the commoners were getting closer and closer, and that many of the soldiers from the three provinces had already started to knock their arrows, Cheng Hu, as the commander, shouted loudly. He drew his scimitar and charged towards Kai Wanju on his horse. With a shout, hundreds of cold vanguard warriors also drew their scimitars and charged towards Kai Wanju. They only had one target, General Kai Wanju on his horse. The formation suddenly became chaotic. Many of the soldiers from the three provinces didn't know what was going on. They only felt people charging past them, and if anyone dared to stop them, they would quickly be knocked to the ground and never be able to get up again. This sudden turn of events left many of the soldiers of the three provinces scratching their heads in confusion. Before they could figure out what was going on, Kai Wanju, who was riding on the horse, had his head chopped off. Blood sprayed everywhere. Cheng Hu's personal strength was naturally unquestionable. Just the number of cold vanguard warriors and officers trained by him numbered more than 1,000. Having fought with countless people, he had long trained himself to be invincible in close combat. Coupled with the fact that he was unprepared, it would be strange if Kai Wenju could escape. Without even having the time to react, the commander of the troops, Kai Wenju, was killed on his horse. When the other soldiers from the 3 provinces saw this scene, all of them turned pale with fright. More importantly, the person who killed the general was wearing the same uniform as them. This was the most frightening and inexplicable thing. Why did the soldiers dare to kill the general? If these people dared to kill the general, would they also dare to kill them? Put down your weapons and kneel on the ground. Otherwise, you will be killed without mercy. Waves of shouts came out one after another. More and more recruits with red cloth wrapped around their arms jumped out and shouted. The united front work done before finally played a decisive role at this moment. Cheng Hu's sudden attack and the active cooperation of his 4 battalion commanders, including Feng Zhan and Wang Jinlong, made the soldiers from the 3 provinces squat on the ground in confusion. Although they still didn't know what was going on, one thing was clear. If they didn't drop their weapons and squat on the ground now, they would die. This had been proven by the fact that their comrades had been killed for no reason just now. There were more and more civilians on the periphery, and the soldiers from the 3 provinces were getting closer and closer. Although there were nearly 100 spies from the Security Bureau encouraging everyone to act as the mainstay, when the soldiers from the 3 provinces were getting closer and closer, many civilians couldn't help but slow down. They were civilians and hadn't received any relevant military training. When facing regular soldiers with armor and swords, it would be a lie to say that they weren't nervous. But when they thought that if Bugnam of Gojoseon died in Yunnan Prefecture, the 5-star army would definitely take revenge. At that time, they would also be unable to escape death. Their confidence was strengthened a lot, and they didn't seem to be as scared as before. What's going on? Why isn't anyone shooting at us? Yeah, why do I see that many of these soldiers are squatting down? The distance was getting closer and closer. When they were less than 30 steps away, the civilians at the front finally saw the movements of the soldiers from the 3 provinces. The spies mixed in the crowd played a role at this time. Thinking of what the director said before, that someone would cooperate with them, how could they not know what was going on? Immediately, one by one, they shouted in the crowd, "The soldiers are mutinous. They are on the same side as us. Now, let's go with them and rescue Bugnam of Gojoseon." As soon as such shouts appeared, they rose and fell one after another without end. All the spies in the crowd also shouted in all directions, hoping to convey this fact to the ears of every civilian, so that they could move forward without worry. The fact that there were no arrows from afar was enough to explain everything. After knowing that the soldiers were like them and didn't want anything to happen to Bugnam of Gojoseon, the number of soldiers increased by a lot. They were no longer afraid, and each of them moved faster than before. There was a mutiny on the outside, and it wouldn't be long before it affected the inside. Under the attack from both sides, Wang Zhanjiang's fate was already sealed, and Yang Qindong's safety would naturally be guaranteed. It was at this time that Yang Qindong, to everyone's surprise, broke out from the east alone in a golden cloak. His body was like a fox, and he was as fast as a cheetah. This was the true portrayal of Yang Qindong's current situation. In the darkness, the golden cloak shone like a beacon. After he rushed out, he was locked on by many eyes. Golden cloak, that must be Bugnam of Gojoseon. Go after him. In the darkness, Mu Wang, who was paying close attention to everything, like a viper lurking in the dark, had a flash of excitement in his eyes. He naturally saw the intensity of the battle just now. When he saw how the black cavalry relied on the advanced firearms in their hands to repel the attacks of the 3 provincial armies again and again, he was anxious and uneasy. After observing the battlefield, Mu Ong came to the east. In his opinion, the defense here seemed to be weaker. If he had to launch an attack, he would definitely choose to attack here. Hiding in the east, he didn't know if the 3 provincial armies could break through the black cavalry's defense line if this continued. If they couldn't, once Yang Qindong walked out alive, who could restrain him? Where could they find such a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity? Yang Qindong must die. Otherwise, he would have to go and die. This was the military order he gave to his uncle, Ping Shi Wang Mu Bin, before he came. With the military order in front of him, Mu Wang was still thinking about whether to launch an attack in the chaos. The men he brought were men of sacrifice trained by the Mu family with great effort. In terms of skills, they were naturally not comparable to the ordinary soldiers of the 3 provincial armies. Even so, he was not 100% confident that he could bring 200 men of sacrifice to the Black Cavalry. While he was still struggling in his heart and unable to make a final decision, Yang Chendong rushed out, especially when the other party deliberately stopped in the process of charging. With the help of the moon, they could see his face clearly. Needless to say, Muong was excited. Chapter 1577. He thought that this mission would be very difficult to complete, and the 200 men he brought with him would be thrown here. He never thought that Yang Chendong would actually rush out. Could it be that the Black Cavalry's defensive line was no longer safe? It's just that this is not what Muong should care about now. What he needs to do now is to catch up with Yang Chendong and kill him. Having seen the portrait of Yang Chendong countless times, Muong believed that he would not recognize the wrong person. Therefore, after Yang Chendong, who was wearing a golden cloak, rushed out from the east and kept running away, Muong took him and 200 men under him like ghosts in the night and chased after Yang Chendong. As soon as Muong moved, in the same darkness, the 100 ninjas also moved. For Yang Chendong's appearance and figure, even if he turned into ashes, Bujishi could not forget it. So in just a face-to-face, Bujishi could be 100% sure that the person who escaped was Yang Chendong. Even so, how could he let go of this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity? Yang Chendong appeared, and he was still alone. His appearance also directly attracted the pursuit of 200 men of the Mu family and 100 ninjas. Besides, at this time, Yang Chendong, with the idea of being bold, rushed out from the protection of the Black Cavalry. The reason why he did this was that he wanted to lure the enemy into the trap, and secondly, doing this could also reduce the pressure on the Black Cavalry, so that he could go all out and fight without any scruples. It's just that when he really rushed out, Yang Chendong was not sure whether someone would chase after him or not. It wasn't until he met the soldiers of the 3 provinces who were charging at him from the outside, and used his body to quickly weave through them, that he heard the dense footsteps behind him. Only then did a relaxed smile appear on his face. With Yang Chendong's current skill, his hearing was naturally better than ordinary people. Just from the sound of those footsteps, he could feel that the strength of the people who came was definitely not comparable to the ordinary soldiers of the 3 provinces. From the orderly and light footsteps, Yang Chendong could feel that the other party's breathing was very stable. They should be the work of a well-trained master. Thinking that these people were masters, Yang Chendong couldn't help but rejoice in his actions. If it wasn't for this risk, the killers who waited for a long time and didn't have a chance to attack the small courtyard together with the soldiers of the 3 provinces. If so, the loss of the Black Cavalry would be inevitable. Haha, come on, I hope you can keep up with my speed. After a smile that others couldn't see flashed across the corner of Yang Chendong's mouth, he stomped his feet on the ground and rushed forward again. With only 50% of his strength, Yang Chendong could keep a safe distance from the pursuers behind him. Yang Chendong led the way in front without any hurry. Behind him were the men of sacrifice led by Muong and the ninjas led by Chueisho. As the 2 sides chased and fled, the distance between them and the small courtyard was getting farther and farther. Keep an eye on him. Don't let him run away. Muong was very excited at this time. When he spoke, he looked back, and then his eyes flashed with helplessness. Unlike Yang Chendong's skill, he could rush out of the encirclement of the 3 provinces without any injuries. When he led his men to break out of the encirclement, it took him some effort. The moment he collided with the soldiers of the 3 provinces, both sides were entangled for a short period of time. After sacrificing the lives of several men of sacrifice, he finally managed to kill his way out. This was because the soldiers of the 3 provinces were not prepared in the dark. Otherwise, Muong didn't dare to think about how many of the 200 men of sacrifice could escape alive. Now that several people have died, and all of this will fall on Yang Chendong's head, Muang's killing intent was even stronger at this time. Chueisho, who was 1 step behind them, was not any better. Just now, after a fierce battle, After losing the lives of several ninjas, they were able to rush out. Although they were reinforcements invited by Zhu Huihua, before their identity was announced, ordinary soldiers of the three provinces didn't know who they were. If they met on the battlefield, they were either comrades or enemies. Several ninjas died before they could catch up with the main character. Chueisha was also angry, but when he thought that he could finally catch young Chendong, his mood became excited again. He knew the importance of this battle. It will indicate whether the ninjas can be independent of Yang Xie, and whether they have the opportunity to rebuild the small Japanese empire. And for this great goal, even if they use all their strength, even if they lose their lives, it is worth it. Both of them looked like they would not give up until they achieved their goal. The two teams followed Yang Chendong's footsteps closely and weaved through the southern cloud manor. Yang Chendong, who was walking in front, was undoubtedly the most relaxed person. If he wanted to, with his strength, he could easily get rid of the tail behind him, but he didn't do that. He wanted to see if there was a second force that wanted to take his life. In this way, one side fled, while the other chased for about half an hour. Even when Yang Chendong felt tired, he still didn't find any new enemies. He knew that the dark forces in Yunnan Mansion were only these. He looked at the direction and went to the Xingwang Temple in the east of the city. Xingwang Temple, in the Great Ming Dynasty at that time, almost every town had one. It represented a kind of sustenance for the people. As the Xingwang Temple of Yunnan Mansion, it covered a large area. It was equivalent to the size of a courtyard, and it was protected by a courtyard wall. It had its own independent courtyard. This was the cemetery Yang Chendong prepared for the people chasing behind him, and it was also the place where Yang Chendong prepared a backup plan. Just now, he had passed by it twice. He believed that the people who had been lying in ambush must have made all kinds of preparations. It was time to close the net. When he came to the Xingwang Temple again, Yang Chendong flashed and jumped in the wall. His whole person disappeared into the darkness like a ghost. Following behind him were Muong and the others. Several men with good body skills also flew up, grabbed the courtyard wall, and jumped in. Soon the door was opened from the inside, and more men rushed in from the door. Nearly 200 men rushed into the Xingwang Temple with the fastest speed, which made Ishiki, who followed closely behind, couldn't help but stop. He only stopped for a few seconds, and then he rushed in with nearly 100 ninjas. "Who are you people?" As soon as they entered the courtyard, a group of men turned around and surrounded Ishiki and the others. The ninjas were not willing to be outdone, and they all held their ninja swords in their hands, ready to fight at any time. During the pursuit, Muong knew that there was another group of pursuers behind him. However, he didn't know who these people were, so he didn't pay attention to them. After all, killing Yang Chendong was the most important task. But now, the two sides finally collided, and it was time for an explanation. "Don't be nervous. We are also looking for Bugnam of Gojoseon to take his life." Ishiki stepped forward and looked at Muong, who was nervous. This wasn't because Ishiki was afraid of Muong. In this dark night, although he didn't have the number of people, he was confident that he could win. It's just that he didn't forget that Yang Chendong was his target, and he didn't want to complicate things before that. How could Muong not think the same way? Although he didn't know the strength of his opponents, he didn't see them coming. However, when they saw him, they did not immediately attack him. This proved everything. They weren't Yang Chendong's subordinates, and with this, he won't be an enemy before completing the mission. "Well, I will believe you for the time being. Now Yang Chendong is in this Xingwang Temple. Let's look for him carefully." Muong stopped his men from attacking and turned around to go inside the Xingwang Temple. He had already arranged people to guard outside the temple. If Yang Chendong wanted to escape, he wouldn't be able to escape from his eyes. The two groups of people were divided into several teams, and they began to slowly move forward. They went to one temple after another, and it seemed like they were going to turn this place upside down to find Yang Chendong. In the dark, Yang Chendong's eyes had already been put on the most advanced night vision goggles, and he was watching Muong and Ishiki slowly approaching him. At this moment, Yang Chendong's eyes were filled with an inexhaustible anger, all because he saw Ishiki. Although the other party was dressed in black at this time, and there was a black mask on his face, but just like the other party could easily recognize him, he also recognized the other party. Ishiki is dead. He died in the assassination of Mandula II, This is a well-known thing in Yangxia. But no one would have thought that in order to deter the world, Manto Ratu hung all the assassins on the wooden pole to warn the world. Because of this action, the secret agents of the Security Bureau carefully examined the corpses, but they didn't find the leader of the ninja clan, Kuroshio Shinobi. When this information was reported to Yang Chundong, he was a little more vigilant. For this reason, he has taken some precautions, but at that time, Yang Chundong was still optimistic that Ishiki might have been burned, or he might have escaped with serious injuries and died. After all, he is a special ninja, and his strength is not comparable to ordinary people. This was just a kind of hope. However, when Chue Shi appeared in the Xing Wang temple, Yang Chunong knew that he had been too optimistic. This person is not dead, and he wants to kill him. Thinking that if he didn't save him, Ishiki would have died, and there would be no ninja today. And it was his own kindness that led to all of this. The anger in his heart couldn't be extinguished. Yang Chundong hates betrayal, especially after betrayal, they want to harm him. With this, there will be no good result for Ishiki today. Chapter 1578. Get ready to do it. In the end, Yang Chundong shook his head. He knew that those were just memories. Now, it was time to make up his mind to eradicate all of this. Yang Chundong, who seemed to have made some kind of decision, walked out of the darkness wearing a golden robe. As soon as he appeared, the death warriors of the Mu family and the Japanese ninjas who were searching for him couldn't help but exclaim, and then everyone quickly rushed forward and surrounded him. With the help of the torch in his hand, the entire courtyard of the Xing Wang temple was illuminated, and Yang Chundong's face also appeared in everyone's eyes. When he saw that it was indeed Yang Chundong, Mu Wang was overjoyed. Previously, he had been worried that the person chasing him was fake, and that he would fall for a trick to lure the tiger away from the mountain. But now, he could let go of his worries. On the other side, Blowing Stone, who was wearing a knight's suit, frowned. The person who came is Yang Chundong, and he is confident that he won't be wrong. But because of this, he couldn't help but mutter in his heart, the other party shouldn't have come out. 1 against 300, and such elite 300 people. Even if they were made of iron, they wouldn't be their opponents. But why did he know that? Why did he come out? Why? Thinking of Yang Chundong's various means before, especially the last time when Ivan's sneak attack failed, and even the 30,000 cavalry led by Yes Hin were destroyed, Blowing Stone's face suddenly became ugly. Could it be that this is a trap set by Yang Chundong? When he thought of Yang Chundong's past, for some reason, Blowing Stone had a feeling of panic. Although he glanced around and didn't find anything wrong, he was still very nervous at the moment. Unlike Yang Chundong's men, Mu Wang at this moment appeared in front of Yang Chundong as a winner. Oh, this should be King Wunan of Damyang. A Mu Wang of the Mu family. I've been waiting for a long time. The Mu family of Sheeping King? Yang Chundong wasn't surprised when he heard this. He just repeated it and chuckled. Then, he didn't pay any more attention to the other party. Instead, he looked at the area under the rock. What? Friend, are you not going to introduce yourself? Even if you want my life, you should at least let me know who you are, right? Yang Chundong was so calm that people who didn't know would think that this was his home ground. So when they heard this, many of the Mu family's death warriors and ninjas showed resentment on their faces. As ordinary ninjas, although they know that they once worked for Yangxia, they don't know that everything they need for training, such as food, clothing, shelter, transportation, etc., was provided by Yang Chundong. They thought that the upper echelons had no choice but to lower their heads and submit to others in order to survive. In fact, several special ninjas like Kurosawa also said this to the people below. This caused everyone to look at Yang Chundong without the slightest bit of gratitude, only murderous intent and anger. But Chuisho is different from ordinary people. He knows everything. When he saw Yang Chundong's eyes looking at him, he knew that the other party already knows his identity, otherwise, he wouldn't question him in such a tone. When he thought about how he relied on Yang Chundong to develop and even lived until now, and it was because of Yang Chundong's help, he felt short of breath. Facing this question, he naturally didn't know how to answer. Chuisho didn't speak immediately, which caused Yang Chundong to laugh. What's wrong? Could it be that all of you are mute? Or are you too ashamed to say your name and identity? Yang Chundong deliberately said these words in Japanese. This is also his way of telling Chuisho that this king has already recognized his identity, and there is no point in hiding it anymore. Baka. What is he talking about? Is he looking down on us ninjas? At this time, those ninjas have already exploded. Their dignity will never allow others to judge them like this. But they also know the importance of respect. At this moment, after most of the ninjas vented their dissatisfaction, they still looked at Chuisho. They want him to speak for them. He even spoke in Japanese. Chuisho knew that his identity has already been exposed. It's just that at this moment, he was no longer afraid. Since he made such a choice, he must bear the consequences, so before he came, he was prepared to die, although he didn't think that this trip would be dangerous. After taking a deep breath and calming down, Chuisho finally spoke. Bugnam of Gojoseon, long time no see. I am a special ninja of the Japanese Empire, Chuisho. It turned out to be a ninja. Muong, who saw everything from the side, couldn't help but be surprised. But soon this surprise was suppressed in the bottom of his heart. This time, he didn't want to be enemies with ninjas, but to kill Yang Chendong. As long as he can complete this task, it's just a small ninja whose country has been destroyed. He really doesn't put him in his eyes. You finally dare to admit your identity? But why don't you call yourself a servant? And what Japanese empire did you say? Wasn't it destroyed a long time ago? Now it's just a province of Yangxia. Yang Chendong waited for Chuisho to admit his identity, then he couldn't help but laugh. His words were full of sarcasm and contempt. In the past, these ninjas under the rock claimed to be slaves in front of Yang Chendong, and even if he wanted, these people claimed to be lackeys. But now, these small titles prove their ambition. In the face of these sarcastic words, the other ninjas who understood Chinese naturally couldn't stand it. They all looked at Chuisho angrily. Chuisho wasn't much better. If it was just him and Yang Chendong here, he would just listen to some of these words. But now there are so many ninjas here. He absolutely won't allow anyone to question and disrespect him. So at this moment he suddenly shouted back, Bugnam of Gojoseon, the past is the past. Please speak with dignity. Dignity? Bah. Yang Chendong opened his mouth and spat. A group of people who are willing to be dogs in order to survive. You want others to respect you. You think too highly of yourselves. Let me tell you, a dog is a dog. Even if it's wearing clothes, it's just a pet called by the master. In the face of a master who gives you food and drinks, you have to learn to wag your tail and beg, not to be treated with equal respect like a human, because you don't deserve it. After saying these words, it didn't seem to be enough. Yang Chendong continued to say, if it wasn't for this king, you would already be dead. How could you have your current scale? Without this king's money, how could you recruit people and train them wholeheartedly? Do you really think you can deny everything just because you've eaten everything? Facing Yang Chendong's questioning, Chuisho opened his mouth several times to say something, but in the end, he didn't say anything. Yang Chendong was right. If it wasn't for his pity and help, they would have already been killed by the samurai of the Japanese Empire. They wouldn't have been able to survive until now, let alone develop and grow stronger. They were once their benefactors, but now they don't want to repay him. They want to kill their master. What they did was indeed a bit too much. After venting for a while, Yang Chendong's mood seemed to be better. He opened his mouth and said, all right, let the past go with the wind. Since you have chosen to be enemies with this king, then there's no meaning in saying those things. Now that you have found this king and want to kill this king, can you tell me who ordered you to do this? Oh, don't say no. If you want to train ninjas, without enough money, it's impossible. Don't try to fool this king. With a change of topic, Yang Chendong placed the question on the person behind the scenes. This was also the answer that Yang Chendong desperately wanted to know. Wasn't the reason why he took such a risk on this trip for this answer, to find out who the traitor was? Yang Chendong didn't mention the past. He just wanted to know who ordered them to do it. This request was already very low. Before a prisoner died, they were allowed to eat a full meal, not to mention Yang Chendong, who was their benefactor. But he just wanted to know who was behind the scenes. This was not too much. If Chuishiki knew the answer, he would tell Yang Chendong. But unfortunately, he really didn't know. Chuishiki shook his head. Bugnam of Gojoseon. It's not that Chuishiki doesn't want to tell you. I really don't know. I only know to listen to Emogue's orders. Emogue? Who is he? Although Yang Chenong was somewhat dissatisfied with this answer, he also knew that Chuashiki really didn't know. Otherwise, he wouldn't refuse to answer this question. I don't know who he is. I just know everything. I just listen to him. By the way, he should be in the palace of the 3 provinces now, beside the 3 provincial kings. It's a pity. I'm afraid that Bugnam of Gojoseon will never see him again. Chuashiki said while shaking his head, as if he was going to die here today. He was destined to not know the result. Imogue, right? I'll remember this name. Yang Chendong nodded heavily, as if he attached great importance to this name. Seeing that Yang Chendong was still hesitating about this matter, seeing that Chuashiki seemed to have answered his question, and seeing that it was getting late, Muong laughed loudly. Well, Bugnam of Gojoseon, you should know everything you need to know. Now you shouldn't have any last wishes. It's time to go on the road. Go on the road? With just you? You're just a small child of the Mu family. Do you know that I'm Bugnam of Gojoseon, the emperor of the Great Ming Dynasty, recognized by the emperor of the Great Ming Dynasty, Bai Ming, and the emperor of the Southern Ming Dynasty? Do you know that you're offending your superiors by doing this to me? Seeing that Chuashiki couldn't ask any more questions, Yang Chendong turned his gaze to Muong. Chapter 1579. Muong had never experienced Yang Chendong's methods. He had only heard about them, so Muong was not afraid of him. Seeing that Yang Chendong still wanted to use his position to oppress others, Muong could not help but burst into laughter. Ha ha ha, Bugnam of Gojoseon? The emperor personally conferred the title? Don't you think it's ridiculous to say this? Don't you know that all this is because you were forced to do so? You're just a courtier. Instead of thanking the emperor for his kindness, you only want to rebel and become the emperor. Now you still have the face to talk about these principles. Don't you feel ashamed? Muong's scolding attracted a burst of cheers from the men of sacrifice around him. Although they had not made a move yet, it was obvious that their young master Mu was much better than the special ninja of the Japanese Empire. This was something they should be proud of. Yang Chendong listened to all this carefully, and there was no trace of unhappiness on his face. This was because he knew that Muong wasn't the only one who thought this way. Most of the officials of the Great Ming Dynasty were also thinking this way. This was everyone's intuition about him. He really needed to understand it. It was a pity that Muong's eloquence was only as... After saying this, he shut up. Perhaps he was disappointed that he did not see Yang Chendong flying into a rage, so he lost interest. Why don't you continue? Yang Chendong, on the other hand, didn't seem to have heard enough and asked such a question. This really angered Muong. He had never seen such a thick-skinned person. For a moment, he did not know what to say. He simply did not answer. Instead, he clenched the long sword in his hand and shouted, "What's there to say to a dying man?" "Oh, I see." Yang Chenong nodded as if he understood, but then shook his head. "I gave you a chance to vent your dissatisfaction. If you don't want to say it, then there's really no chance. However, I have to warn you that your actions will bring disaster to the entire Mu family and Sheeping King. I hope you won't regret it when you meet in the Netherworld." Regret? You should be the one regretting it. At the very least, you should die before us. Men, do it. Muong didn't want to say anything else. Perhaps because he couldn't see Yang Chendong's fear, Muong felt that it was unnecessary to say anything. It would be better to take him down and cut him into 1,000 pieces. That's right. We should do it. Do it. As Muong's voice fell, Yang Chendong actually nodded in agreement and then said the same thing. Then, the sound of a dying person wailing could be heard. This voice made Muong and Bao Shi, who were about to make a move, freeze. They couldn't help but stop moving forward. Bang! The closed door of the temple behind them was suddenly knocked open from the outside. Then, a group of black figures jumped in and blocked the direction of the door. Not only that, at the same time, on the courtyard wall, a group of men in black rushed out from behind Yang Chendong. As soon as they appeared, they surrounded Muong and Bao Shi. The sudden change shocked Muong and Chue Ishida. Their expressions were no longer as relaxed as before. The men of sacrifice sent by the Mu family were all very strong. If they were fighting on the battlefield, any one of them would not be afraid of 3 to 5 people. But those shouts just now were so quick that they almost didn't hear any sound of resistance. They were killed one after another. From this point of view, doesn't it mean that this person's skills were more powerful than theirs? The stronger the enemy, the more dangerous their situation would be. It would be strange if they didn't have a good expression. The only thing worth rejoicing over was that although it seemed like they were surrounded, it was clear that not many people had come. There were only a little over 100 people, which was not even half of their number. It seemed that with the advantage of numbers, they still had a fighting chance. Seemingly at the same time, Muong and Blowing Stone's eyes met. Then, almost at the same time, they opened their mouths and said the word kill. They were fast, but some people were faster than them. Those men in black who suddenly appeared, they didn't know when they had the 95 style gun in their hands. Just when those men of sacrifice and ninjas were about to move, a black muzzle was pointed at them, and then there was a burst of fierce gunshots. The bullets flashed in the dark night, and ninjas and men of sacrifice who wanted to rush forward were shot down one by one. Firearms. When they saw the men in black took out these things, whether it was Muong or Bao Shi, their face changed. A strong sense of crisis also pressed down on them, making their originally confident faces lose their confidence. Retreat. Go. Almost one after the other, Bao Shi and Muong gave the order. In their view, although they had the advantage in numbers, in the face of powerful firearms, it was too difficult to win. In that case, it was better to escape first. Anyway, Yang Chendong was still in Yunnan Mansion, so they didn't have to worry about not finding an opportunity to kill him. It's just that at this time, they still wanted to retreat, but it was not so easy. A smoke bomb was thrown at them. The strong smoke exuded a nauseating smell, and their eyes couldn't help but shed tears of pain. In a short time, most people were hit and lost the ability to resist. Throw the flash bomb. Another voice came out, followed by a series of hand grenades that could blind people's eyes. They were thrown in the courtyard, making those men of sacrifice who wanted to escape in the dark, especially the ninjas, have no choice but to stop. Forget about the men of sacrifice. Their advantage was that they were not afraid of death. When their strength was obviously inferior, they were just like straws that could be harvested at any time. Ninjas were different. What they were good at was hiding, or sneaking, or running away with the help of various means. Whether it was using the surrounding environment or the reflection and refraction of light. In short, when it came to escaping, few people dared to say that they were the best. Not to mention in the originally dark environment, as long as they couldn't be killed in the first place, once they escaped, it would be extremely difficult to catch them. It was precisely because they knew and understood this that those flash bombs were thrown out. When a strong light suddenly came out and met the eyes of those ninjas, at that moment, they felt that there was a vast expanse of white in front of them. At this moment, they completely lost their direction, let alone escape. When the flash bombs appeared, the men in black with special goggles moved. They had been trained for this for a long time, and with the protection of the goggles, the flash bomb's damage to them has been minimized. One side couldn't see anything, and the other side's vision was normal, so it was easy to imagine what would happen. The sound of gunshots came out, hitting the legs of the men of sacrifice or ninjas one after another. Soon, the Xing Wang temple was dyed red with blood, and a burst of fishy smell also assailed their nostrils, making them want to vomit. Vomit. Those assassins who first experienced the smoke bombs, then the flash bombs, and then the smell of blood finally couldn't stand it anymore. They began to bend down, lowered their heads, and vomited. But even if they had lost the power to resist in a short time, the gunshots still didn't stop. One by one, their legs were penetrated by bullets, and blood flowed out. One by one, they couldn't stand still and fell to the ground. In a short time, the assassins who wanted to resist and break out of the encirclement stopped moving. They fell to the ground one by one, wailing and screaming. At the same time, their bodies were twitching. They didn't know if it was because of the gunshot wounds or because of the smell in their noses. They kept twisting their bodies in pain. Control them all. Seeing that the dust had settled, the group of black-clothed men stopped. One by one, they lit up their torches and began to walk towards the injured assassins on the ground. Fight them to the death. When a black-clothed man came to the side of a death warrior, a sudden shout resounded. Then, a figure endured the pain from his legs and suddenly pounced on him like a ferocious tiger coming down from the mountain. His momentum was extraordinary. "You're courting death." The man in black with a torch in his right hand seemed to have expected this scene to happen. He just moved his body to the side and dodged the tiger's attack. Then, when the assassin's figure missed, a torch hit the assassin's back. Under the powerful force, the assassin spat out another mouthful of blood. This time, he completely fainted. This scene continued to happen. Men of sacrifice were men of sacrifice. They kept fighting back. Although they had lost the support of their legs, they still fought back. However, those men in black all seemed to have unique skills. Not only were none of them injured, but they all used a single move to subdue the killers who were still unwilling to give up. Once again, they knocked them unconscious on the ground. Among them, the most obvious one was the man in black who fought against Muong. Muong was allowed to lead the team. Needless to say, his skills were excellent. Therefore, although his legs were penetrated by bullets just now, he did not give up the last chance. When he endured the pain in his legs, he jumped up and rushed toward the man in black. He was full of confidence that his sneak attack would succeed. Although he did this, he still could not avoid the result of death. But it was probably the best result to be able to drag one of them down with him before he died. Although it was said that it would be faster if it was late, when he really attacked, Muong was disappointed again. The moment he flew up, he felt that something was wrong. Then he found that in the face of his absolute counterattack, his opponent did not panic. He even saw the disdain in his opponent's eyes under the moonlight. Then, facing his fierce attack, his opponent did not dodge. On the contrary, his opponent met his attack head-on with his left fist without a torch. Chapter 1580. Logically speaking, it was a good thing that the opponent didn't dodge. But for some reason, Muong had a bad feeling in his heart. Soon, his feeling became reality. The fist collided with his body, and then he felt his whole body fall apart as if he was electrocuted. Then, he fell to the ground and fainted. But before he fainted, Muong vaguely saw a big foot stepping on his head. He didn't know what would happen next, nor did he have time to think about it, because he had already closed his eyes in pain. Okay, violent ape, this person's identity is important. We can't let him die now. A shout rang out behind him. Only then did the black-clothed man stop his foot that was about to land. Then, he fiercely stomped to the side, forcefully creating a shallow pit in the ground. Only then did he continue to walk forward, completing his mission of investigating the enemy. Sixth young master, Violent Ape is like this. He was born with great strength and a bad temper, but fortunately, he didn't ruin anything. Silver Hand wiped the sweat on his forehead and said nervously to Yang Chendong, "It's okay, as long as he doesn't die. Even if he does die, it's okay." Yang Chendong shrugged indifferently. This time, his backup plan was the soldiers of the Wolf-Fong Special Forces. Over the years, the development of the Wolf-Fong Special Forces wasn't fast. It could even be described as slow, but their strength was really terrifying. They spent most of their time on training, and their strength was terrifying. If it was just a one-on-one, even the Black Cavalry wouldn't be their opponent. It was precisely because of the high intensity of training that they were very strict when recruiting people, so the development speed wasn't fast. But their overall combat strength was really tyrannical. This time, Yang Chendong gave them an early order to hide in Yunnan Manor and wait for orders. Yang Chendong had a large warehouse, but he wasn't a reckless person. In order to be foolproof, he had double insurance before entering the city. For example, there was the Cold Front 1st Army's 1st Division's 1st Regiment lurking in the 3 Provincial Armies recruit camp, and there were nearly 300 Wolf-Fong Special Forces members. Although there weren't many of them in total, they were the most powerful of them all. Since they were going to turn the enemy's stomach upside down, they would naturally choose quality over quantity. This time, there were a total of 130 Special Forces members who appeared at the Xingwang Temple. Each of them could fight against 10 or even dozens of people. They were well prepared and equipped with the most advanced firearms. It was only 300 assassins, and they could easily wipe them out. If it wasn't for the fact that he had to keep some of them alive to interrogate them, he would have finished off all of them with just one round of gunfire. Then again, even Muang's counterattack was easily blocked. What was the use of the others struggling? It was as if Blowstone had also launched a counterattack. His opponent was Steel Leg. Unable to use the ninja's concealment jutsu, in just 3 rounds, he was kicked in the right arm. The bones in his arm were shattered, and he fainted. Under the encirclement of 130 Wolf Fong members, no one who resisted had a good ending. Those who underestimated the enemy were seriously injured and fainted. Those who were seriously injured were directly killed. It was a clean and quick death. Yang Chendong stopped paying attention to what was happening on the battlefield after he saw the members of Wolf Fong attacking so cleanly and efficiently. Since the people who should be lured out had been lured out, there was no need for him to hide any strength. It was also time to counterattack. Silverhand, where's your captain? Reporting to the 6th young master, the captain is leading people to the periphery of the 3 provinces king's mansion. He is just waiting for the order to enter the mansion to take the people. Silverhand was arranged to cooperate with Yang Chendong to eliminate the assassins because he was rational in doing things. But in the Wolfong Special Forces, the real big brother was still the Captain Tai Hu. Okay, I will take 20 people away. The rest will be left to you. Clean up this place. When they wake up, interrogate them one by one. I want to know all the secrets in their hearts. Yang Chendong patted Silverhand's shoulder and said so. Please rest assured, 6th young master, I promise to complete the task. This slap made Silverhand extremely excited. He even noticed that the other team members were looking at him with envy. This was Yang Chendong, the soul of Yang Xie, the founder of the 5-star army and also the founder of the Wolfong Special Forces. It could be said that everyone's current achievements were all thanks to Yang Chendong. A person who was like a god in their eyes actually patted him on the shoulder. How could his comrades not be envious? Yang Chendong didn't think so much. Instead, he had already left the Xing Wang Temple under the protection of 20 members of the Special Forces and went straight to the 3 provinces king's mansion. At the 3 provinces king's mansion, the atmosphere was a little tense at the moment. The battlefield in the small courtyard couldn't be taken down for a long time. The people in the city began to join in. When the mutiny outside, General Kai Wanju was killed and so on were reported to Zhu Huichuan, his face was already very ugly. He didn't expect things to turn out like this. Men, immediately take this king's tiger tally and mobilize the troops. Invite General Luo Guan, Rajiv, Azad, and Hack from the Mingding Mansion to the Yunnan Mansion. No matter what, we must kill Yang Chendong. Go quickly. Zhu Huichuan's voice was no longer as calm as it used to be. He couldn't help but be anxious. Once Yang Chendong escaped this time, he would be at a disadvantage righteously. In this way, the people of the 3 provinces who knew the truth would no longer believe him. Once they stood on Yang Chendong's side, how could he make a comeback? He wasn't afraid of the people, but an organized group of people was terrifying. Even if these people couldn't be used by him, they couldn't be used by Yang Chendong. But now, it seemed that he had underestimated the commoners' strength. To think that they had gathered an army of over 10,000 commoners right under his nose. What kind of means did they have to use to achieve this? Thinking of this, Zhu Huihua felt his scalp tingle. He felt as if a huge mountain was pressing down on him, making it hard for him to breathe. The best way to solve all of this was to kill Yang Chendong. Once this person was gone, the people would lose their nuclear core force, and it would be much easier to deal with them. In the end, Yang Chendong had to die. That's right. Inform Wu Yingtu to immediately enter the city and cooperate with General Ming to take over the city's defense. Once the 5-star army appears outside the city, we must defend the city and wait for reinforcements. After thinking about it, Zhu Huichuan decided that this Miao King would come in handy. Zhu Huichuan didn't completely believe in the Miao people. Therefore, on the surface, it seemed like he put Wu Yingtu in an important position, but he didn't allow the Miao army to enter the city. He only allowed them to set up camp outside the city. But now, seeing that the situation in the city was getting out of control, he thought of the 10,000 Miao soldiers and decided to put them in an important position. After giving out a few orders, Zhu Huichuan sat back on the throne and his face looked much better. Next, he waited for news and battle reports from various parties. At the same time, he was also looking forward to the possibility that Wang Zhanjiang could kill Yang Chendong. Zhu Huichuan didn't know that Yang Chendong had already left the courtyard in the dark. Not only that, but the 2 assassin teams that were most likely to threaten his safety were also eliminated. However, this wasn't the worst. The worst thing was that his mansion was surrounded. Even the slightest movement here couldn't escape the surveillance of the Langus Special Force led by Tai Hu. Just like the few messengers he sent out, it seemed like they had left the mansion and were safe. However, as soon as they walked into the nearby streets, they would be immediately intercepted and killed. It was still okay if they put down their weapons and surrendered, they could still live. However, anyone who resisted would be killed without mercy. In other words, all the orders in the mansion were only to enter and not to leave. After Yang Chendong arrived outside the mansion, the news couldn't even enter because there was no need to hide anything. They could directly lay their cards on the table. The sixth young master, Yang Chendong's appearance made Tai Hu and the others excited. Their eyes were filled with admiration. Although Tai Hu was the captain of the Langus Special Force and looked majestic, they were originally a special force that was independent of the five-star army. In other words, their actions were not under the jurisdiction of the five-star army. They didn't need to report their whereabouts. They were very mysterious and powerful. However, this was only in front of ordinary people. In front of Yang Chendong, these so-called arrogants could be removed one by one. It was because of Yang Chendong that the Langus Special Force had everything. It was also because of Yang Chendong's support that the Langus Special Force could be treated like this. Therefore, when facing the real founder of the Langus Special Force, Tai Hu and the others only had respect and obedience in their eyes. Well done. Yang Chendong had always been a person who was not stingy with his praise. When he walked to Tai Hu's side, his right hand naturally fell on his shoulder and gently patted him. Then, he asked about the situation in the mansion. Reporting to the sixth young master, there are a total of 3 doors in the mansion: the main door, the back door, and the side door. I have arranged people to watch over these 3 doors. I guarantee that when they come out, they will be killed. All their connections with the outside world have been cut off. Tai Hu straightened his body and made a simple report of the situation. Very good. Yang Chendong nodded with satisfaction after listening. How is the situation in the mansion? If we rush in now, how confident are we in controlling this place? Reporting to the sixth young master, Skinny Monkey has already gone in just now. The situation inside is basically clear. There are about 400 bodyguards of Zhu Huihua in the mansion. There are also more than 100 servants in the mansion. They don't have much fighting power. Therefore, as long as the sixth young master gives the order, we have absolute confidence in controlling this place. However, there may be some movements. After all, no one knows if Zhu Huihua has other means of rescue. When Tai Hu said this, he didn't look very confident. Chapter 1581. To be able to become the king of 3 provinces, it was normal for him to have some tricks up his sleeve. However, if he was not wrong, he would only release smoke to warn others of the danger. However, since Yang Chendong had decided to make a move, he was naturally not afraid of others knowing. Moreover, Chushi had already said that there should be a person called Imogue in the palace. He was the most troublesome existence because he knew nothing about this person. He did not know if this person had any other tricks up his sleeve. Whatever, the city is already in chaos. Now that the citizens have joined the war, we can't wait any longer. Otherwise, we will lose our strength. Let's do it this way. Tell everyone to get ready. We will attack in 10 minutes. We must finish the battle in the shortest time possible. As for whether there will be any reinforcements, we don't have to worry about that. With the current situation, I want to see who will come to save the king of 3 provinces. Yang Chendong made his final decision. He had 500 black cavalry soldiers to defend a few small courtyards. Now that the palace was so big, he had more than 100 Wolfang special force soldiers. He was more confident in facing any unexpected situation. One must know that there was everything in the warehouse. At worst, he could take out a small portion of the weapons in the warehouse, and it would be enough to solve any problems. Not to mention, once Zhu Huichun was taken down, the people of the 3 provinces would be in danger. Who would think that they would come to save him? Since Yang Chendong had said so, Tai Hu naturally did not have any doubts. After saluting, he immediately went to make arrangements. After the most elite Wolfang took action, they had already formulated 3 battle plans in just 10 minutes. This was to ensure that once an unknown situation occurred, they would be able to guarantee that they could immediately change the plan to solve the problem. Sixth young master. When Tai Hu came in front of Yang Chendong again, his face was full of confidence. Let's do it. Yang Chendong of course knew that this was already prepared. He nodded his head. Let's do it. Tai Hu immediately turned around. Even though the sun had not risen yet, when he uttered those two words, hundreds of black shadows could be seen moving in different directions. They were advancing towards the prince mansions of the three provinces from three different directions. The battle outside was in full swing. Although the atmosphere in the three provincial palaces was a little tense, no one thought that there would be danger here. After all, the southern cloud manor was still in the hands of their king. Therefore, ordinary people were still doing what they were supposed to do. Many of the guards were still sleeping and resting. Only a portion of the guards were patrolling the mansion, but they were just walking around. When the members of the special forces suddenly appeared like ghosts, many of the guards fell to the ground before they could react to what had happened. Most of them had a fatal wound on their bodies. One of the weapons that the special forces members were most used to using was the three-pronged bayonet. This type of weapon was already banned in the future. Its lethality was too great. Once one was injured by it, one would basically die from excessive bleeding. Scheming against the unsuspecting. With the strong attacking the weak, the patrolling guards didn't even have time to react before a third of them died. At this moment, someone finally reacted and began to shout loudly to warn the others. However, shouting at this moment wouldn't affect the overall situation. Even if the guards who were already resting woke up and took out their swords, they would only be able to hold on for a little longer. Not good, not good. A guard rushed into the main hall of the prince mansion and knelt down in front of the prince of the three provinces, Zhu Huichen. What's going on? Why are you so flustered? Zhu Huichen was unhappy. On the other hand, Qin Tian, who was standing at the side waiting for news, had an extremely ugly expression. This was because he could vaguely hear the battle cries, and it didn't seem to be far away. This made his scalp tingle. Reporting to your majesty, someone suddenly launched an attack on the prince mansion. The guards. What's wrong with the guards? Zhu Huichen walked forward impatiently and grabbed the guard's collar as he asked anxiously. The guards can't hold on anymore. What? Hearing this, Zhu Huichen couldn't help but let go of his right hand and involuntarily took a few steps back until he came to Qin Tian's side. After being supported by Qin Tian, he stopped. However, his face was pale and it was obvious that he was frightened. Even Qin Tian, who was behind him, wasn't any better. This was because he didn't expect that someone would have designs on the prince mansion at this time and harm the prince mansion. However, intuitively, he still didn't think that it was Yang Chendong's doing. This was Yunnan Manor, and the other party was surrounded in the small courtyard. Logically speaking, the other party should be unable to protect himself. Why would they come to find trouble with him? How would Qin Tian know that Yang Chendong's personal strength was strong? Under the dark sky, with his master-level movement technique, unless someone was watching him, it wouldn't be difficult for him to break out of the encirclement. Qin Tian didn't think that it was Yang Chendong's doing. He looked at the guard and asked, "Do you know who is coming? How many people are there?" "I don't know. Those people are too strong. Our guards aren't their opponents at all. We only held on for a while because of our advantage in numbers. However, now that we don't have the advantage in numbers, we can't hold on any longer. Your Majesty, please think of a way." The guard who reported the news shook his head. Under the dark sky, how could he have the time to observe those things? He was only here to report the news. On the other hand, Zhu Huichen was worthy of being the king of three provinces. He still had some courage. The panic just now was only because of the sudden incident. Now that he knew the situation outside, he immediately said, Go and set a fire. Inform the people outside that the prince mansion is in danger." "Oh," the guard responded and turned to leave. Zhu Huichen, who was left behind, grabbed Qin Tian's arm and went straight to the inner courtyard. A cunning rabbit has 3 burrows. Zhu Huichen killed his elder brother and younger brother. He also offended the southern Ming dynasty and Bugnam of Gojoseon. Under such circumstances, how could he not have a backup plan? For example, there was a secret basement in the prince mansion. The people who built the basement had been killed by him. Now, as long as he hid there, it would be difficult to be discovered. Zhu Huichen pulled Qin Tian and didn't take anyone else with him. He didn't even care about his family members. He quietly disappeared from the prince mansion and hid in a secret room. As the host, Zhu Huichen was prepared. However, as a guest, Mo Gue didn't have such conditions. When he learned that someone had killed their way into the prince mansion, he let out a long sigh. Then, he went to the transmitter and started to send a message. This was the last telegram that Mo Gue could send. He had already thought of the content. However, he had been hoping that he wouldn't need to use the content in his life. But now, even the prince mansion of 3 provinces was about to be attacked. He knew that it was time. This was a telegram of desperation. Mo Gue sent the message that someone had killed their way into the prince mansion and that he would be killed soon. He also reported that Zhu Huichen was a good-for-nothing who was indecisive. That was why he had ruined the good situation. It was a mistake to ally with such a person. Yes, Mo Gue thought that Yang Chendong was going to die. There were only 500 people. So what if they were powerful? If Zhu Huichio came up to kill, he would directly send all the 50,000 troops in the city. Even if the other party had firearms, under the absolute advantage of numbers, he would be able to break through the defense line and kill Yang Chendong. However, the stupid Zhu Huichun chose to capture Yang Chendong alive. As a result, he lost the initiative. When Mo Gue wanted to change his mind, it was too late. After that, Mo Gue expressed his gratitude to Uncle Ling for saving his life. He said that it was time for him to repay Uncle Ling for saving his life. He would die to repay Uncle Ying's kindness. After sending the telegram, Mo Gue dismantled the radio station and buried it where he had dug the hole. He didn't want people to know that there was a radio station here, because it would make people think of Uncle Ling behind him and threaten the safety of some people. When he was done, the battle cries outside the door were getting closer and closer. Mo Gue smiled bitterly and took out a pill from his sleeve. He swallowed it without hesitation and closed his mouth. Clang. The door was pushed open and 2 special forces rushed in. It wasn't difficult for Langya to take down the entire prince mansion. In the end, all the guards in the mansion were killed. The few who surrendered survived. Unfortunately, they didn't find Zhu Huichen. Even Chen Tian, the civil official, was nowhere to be found. Bring Zhu Changjiu here. Yang Chendong called the steward of the prince's mansion, who had been instigated by Yang San, after failing to find anyone and even searching twice carefully, came to no avail. Zhu Changjiu came to Yang Chendong, trembling with fear. After knowing the identity of the person who came, he knelt on the ground and shouted, "Long live Bugnam of Gojoseon." "Well, don't be afraid. You're one of us. We won't make things difficult for you. When we're done here, you can go to Yangxia and reunite with your sister. You're a meritorious official, so you'll be rewarded accordingly." After comforting him, Yang Chendong asked if there was a secret passage or a basement in the mansion. Although Zhu Changjiu had been with Zhu Huichen for many years, he didn't know much about it. He shook his head and said, "Your Majesty, I really don't know about it." Yang Chendong was not surprised by this answer. After all, Zhu Huihua had even abandoned his wife and child. In other words, even his family members did not know the location of the secret passage, let alone a steward of the residence. "Well, you should know a man called Mo Gue, right?" "Oh, yes, the mysterious man you reported to Director Yang San." Chapter 1582. His name is Mo Gue? This humble one knows this person. Zhu Changjiu, who had regained his senses, quickly replied, "Okay, bring him in." Yang Chendong waved his hand, and Mo Gue, who was pale, was carried into the yard and stood in front of Zhu Changjiu. Zhu Changjiu had indeed taken poison. The special forces were still a step too late and did not manage to save him. But even so, Yang Chendong still needed to confirm this person's identity. Once he was sure, he might be able to obtain some information by searching for this person's identity. Yes, he's the mysterious man. Zhu Changjiu didn't know Mo Gue's name, but he had seen him before, so he recognized him immediately. "All right, thank you. You can go and rest now." Yang Chendong nodded. His gaze fell on the dead Mo Gue as he spoke regretfully. He was so close to catching this person. If he guessed correctly, This person should be the mole who reported Yang Xie's situation to Zhu Huichun. But he didn't know who ordered him to do so. Yang Chendong had a good memory. He thought about it carefully. It was definitely the first time he saw Mo Gue. It made sense. The mole was so careful that he couldn't find any clues even after investigating for a long time. Why would he send someone to contact Zhu Huichun? Come, take care of this person's body and get someone to draw a portrait. Yang Chenong still hoped that someone could recognize Mo Gue. Maybe there would be new clues. Sixth young master, our people found this radio in Mo Gue's yard. Tai Hu appeared, holding a dark green iron box. Oh, Yang Chendong's eyes lit up. Every radio station was a big warehouse item. When it was distributed, it had a serial number and was kept. Perhaps he could find some clues from this radio station. For example, the number 9826 was written at the bottom of the radio station. This was an important clue. Yang Chendong asked Tai Hu to keep it well and hand it over to Bureau Chief Yang San so that he could investigate it. By the way, what's the situation outside? Before Zhu Huichun disappeared, there was a big fire in the mansion. Everyone in the city must know that the mansion was in danger. If there were reinforcements, they should be here soon. Our brothers are watching outside. They haven't reported back yet, so there shouldn't be any reinforcements. Tai Hu replied respectfully. No reinforcements? Hee, then there shouldn't be any. After Yang Chendong heard this, a smile appeared on his face. Although it was already dark, it was impossible for the prince's mansion not to attract attention when it first caught fire and was followed by billowing smoke. If there were reinforcements, they would have been here long ago. But it had been half an hour, and no reinforcements were still not here, which meant there was a big problem. It would be best if there were no reinforcements. Even if there were, Yang Chendong would not be afraid. So this problem was quickly put to the back of his mind. He looked at Tai Hu and said, "Don't worry about the outside. Hurry up and find the secret passage or the basement. This king has a feeling that Zhu Huichun is still in the yard. He hasn't gone far." The reason why Yang Chendong dared to make such an assertion was naturally because he saw the location of the three provinces' king palaces. This was the central area of the city. The people living nearby were either rich or noble. If it was just digging a secret passage in the mansion, it could be done quietly as long as he was careful. But if he wanted to dig it out, it would be too difficult to not alarm the rich who valued safety. In addition, Zhu Huichun's position as the king of the three provinces was still very stable. There was no reason for him to take the risk of digging an escape passage. It was very likely that there was only a basement here. It was just for hiding. If this was the case, it was not difficult to find him. It just needed some time. Understood. After receiving the order, Tai Hu, who was in charge of the special forces, began to search the courtyards one by one. As long as there was a trace of suspicion, they would dig 3 feet into the ground to take a closer look. Let's not talk about finding the passage first. Let's talk about General Ming, who was also in the city. This general, who was entrusted with an important task by Zhu Huichun, was now standing on the wall of Yunnan Manor with a thoughtful expression. He naturally knew about the warning from the king palaces, but he did not send out troops to meet them. Speaking of which, Ming naturally had his own reasons for doing this. For example, he suspected that there should be a trap waiting for him around the king palaces. Once he went, he was afraid that not only would he not be able to save people, but he might also lose his life. He was naturally willing to do such a risky thing. Of course, the most important point was the second point, which was that Ming was dissatisfied with Zhu Huichun. Ming was previously under King Minzhuang, Zhu Huichun. At that time, Zhu Huichun was only King Guangtong. Later, this person rebelled, killed his own brother, and set up his own house. Ming followed him, but he was still only a general. Speaking of which, a general seemed to be very awe-inspiring. But in fact, those who understood the military structure of the three provinces knew that Zhu Huiyu had personally appointed several great generals, such as Yunnan's great general Luo Guan, Guizhou's great general Jiang Wuqing, Guangxi's great general Bai Kuan, and so on. Ming was also a general, which made him dissatisfied. No matter what, he had the merit of supporting the emperor. If he did not follow Zhu Huichun, but followed King Minzhuang, how could there be the current king of the three provinces? Now, Zhu Huichun was the king of the 3 provinces, but he was still a general. He was also arranged to be by Zhu Huichuan's side and was not allowed to lead troops alone. This obviously showed that Zhu Huichun did not trust him. Ming Nung remembered very clearly that Zhu Huichun had promised him before that once he achieved great things, he would be the general of the army. At that time, all the generals would be under his control. Only the word commander was added, but he could indeed become the highest commander in the army. Zhu Huichuan's slip of the tongue made Ming Nung unhappy. Now, he was worried that there was an ambush in the king's mansion. So why would he take the risk? Pass down the order. Without a military order, no one is to act rashly, Ming Nung said thoughtfully. At this moment, Ming Nung was watching and waiting to see how the situation would develop. With military power, he was confident that no matter what the situation was, he could deal with it. As long as the main force of the 5-star army did not appear, the initiative was in his hands. Outside the city, Wu Yingtu also received the report from the scouts and knew about the fire and smoke in the king's mansion. However, he made the same choice as Ming Nung. This did not mean that the two of them had the same thoughts, but he did not dare to act rashly without a command. He was different from Ming Nung. Ming Nung was Zhu Huichuan's direct subordinate, at least he thought so. He was leading the Miao army. If he entered the city without a command, he would be punished severely. Thinking that it was better to avoid unnecessary trouble, he led the 10,000 soldiers and did not move. He only sent scouts into the city to gather information. He was also waiting for Zhu Huichuan's military order. Before this, he was optimistic that Zhu Huichun had already made arrangements. Even if the king's mansion was on fire, if he was not there, who would know who was burning? Back to Wang Zhanjiang. At this moment, he could not even protect himself. The development of the situation was completely out of his expectations. The king's mansion that was in charge of his security had rebelled. Not only that, even General Kai Wanju was killed in the chaos. Without the help of the king's mansion, more and more civilians rushed in front of his army. After a round of fighting, the number of soldiers under Wang Zhanjiang's command was constantly decreasing. Originally, there were close to 20,000 soldiers, but now, not even half of them were left. At this moment, even if he saw the king's mansion on fire, what else could he do? The 3 generals either did not help, waited, or were unable to protect themselves. This created enough time for Yang Chendong. The Langya team members checked one courtyard after another, getting closer and closer to Zhu Huichuan's secret entrance. In the secret underground room, Zhu Huichun did not have a radio, so he did not know what was happening outside. He was optimistic that as long as he wasn't caught by the 5-star army, it wouldn't be long before the emperor's army appeared. Then, the prince's mansion would be taken back, and he would be safe. I did not expect this Yang Chendong to have a trick up his sleeve. He actually wants to catch me. Just you wait. After this king quells the chaos, I will definitely cut you into pieces. Even in the secret room, Zhu Huichun was still cursing Yang Chendong, venting his dissatisfaction. The only one standing at the side, Chen Tian, also had a look of resentment. However, he saw deeper than Zhu Huichun. He said fawningly, "Your Majesty, actually, it is not entirely a bad thing that the king's mansion is under attack. At least this Yang Chendong has revealed all his trump cards. Once our army surrounds the king's mansion, at that time, he will not have any tricks up his sleeves. He will really be at our mercy." Haha, well said. Zhu Huichun burst into laughter after hearing these words. However, Chen Tian also expressed his worry, "Your Majesty, I am afraid that Yang Chendong will not be able to find your Majesty. In his desperation, will he vent his anger on the people in the king's mansion? He won't." On this point, Zhu Huichun was very confident. This was also the reason why he only brought Chen Tian to the secret room and did not bring his family. He said confidently, "If Yang Chendong dares to harm my family, then his reputation will be tarnished for thousands of years. In this way, he will have no place to turn over. Furthermore, if he can't find this king, what is the use of taking my family? There's no way he doesn't understand this." This was the current situation of the Great Ming Dynasty, or rather, the current situation of the Han people under the influence of Confucianism. Here, the emphasis was on not harming the family. Chapter 1583. For Yang Chendong to have such achievements today, even if he were to die now, history would record him in detail. After all, he had shown the might of the Han people, which was worthy of affirmation. On the other hand, if he really touched Zhu Huilio's family, he would be completely morally stained. If that really happened, he would not be able to rest in peace even if he died. His family and loved ones would be ashamed of it. It was because he had thought this through that Zhu Huilu was so confident. That's good. If that's the case, the king has nothing to worry about. The king will definitely win. Chen Tian was also relieved. He was really afraid that Yang Chendong would not be able to defeat the enemy and would act against the families of the 3 provincial kings. However, after thinking about it carefully, the advantages outweighed the disadvantages. As long as Yang Chendong still had a shred of rationality, he would not do such a thing. Hearing the slogan that the king will definitely win, Chen Tian laughed out loud. All right, let's see how Yang Chendong is captured alive or how he dies. Does he really think that he can turn the situation around after taking down the prince's mansion? This proves that he can't hold on any longer. This is just his last act of madness. He is definitely going to lose. Yang Chendong, who Zhu Huilu thought was going to lose, was currently sitting on the throne where Zhu Huilu sat, quietly listening to Tai Hu's report. 6th young master, the 10,000 Miao soldiers outside the city did not act rashly because they did not receive any orders and did not know what was going on here. Actually, this is normal. However, why is that General Ming also not moving? This is really hard to understand. Tai Hu looked as if he was asking for advice. After all, it was a rare opportunity to learn from Yang Chendong directly. Yang Chendong also thought highly of Tai Hu. If there was an opportunity to teach him, he would not be stingy. He first smiled, then said, "The development of everything in the world is not the same. Everyone has their own selfish motives. Obviously, this Ming also has his own thoughts. Before figuring out why the prince's mansion was set on fire, he will not act rashly. I think he is afraid of falling into our ambush and wants to wait for the best price." But Zhu Huihua was his king. If his king was in trouble, shouldn't his subordinates immediately send troops to save him? Isn't he afraid that Zhu Huichen is really fine and will come back to settle old scores with him? Tai Hu still didn't understand. Yang Chendong said patiently, "If it were any other time, of course I would be scared, but now was the most chaotic time. Moreover, if Zhu Huiying is fine, then something must be wrong with this prince. If that is the case, Yang Xie will definitely be in chaos. If Zhu Huilu wants to take advantage of this opportunity to gain benefits, he must have people around him. Ming knows this and knows that he is still valuable, so he is not afraid that Zhu Huilu will turn against him. So that's how it is." Tai Hu finally understood. Then he smiled and said, "But it's a pity that he doesn't know that not only is the 6th young master fine, but only a little over 100 of us from the special forces managed to take down the prince's residence. He's going to miss such a good opportunity to serve the emperor and perform well." Haha, that's right. Yang Chendong shared the same opinion. The prince's residence was not the courtyard he lived in. Because it was small, it was easy to defend. The prince's residence was big and had many walls. If Ming led the army here, it would be impossible for him to defend this place. The best result would be for him to leave with his men. In this way, he would lose the chance to capture Zhu Huilu alive. It could be said that all his efforts would be in vain. However, Ming did not seize this opportunity, which doomed the 3 provincial kings to defeat. While the 2 of them were still talking, the special forces on the other side were not idle. Other than leaving the necessary people to guard the 3 gates to prevent any accidents, the other members were carefully searching. Since Yang Chendong said that Zhu Huilu didn't run away, then he definitely wouldn't run away. As long as they searched carefully, they would definitely find the entrance to the secret passage. That would be the time for Wolf Fong to perform a meritorious service. Every member of the team was searching attentively, not wanting to leave any corner unturned. Among them, Skinny Monkey's movements were the fastest. Looking carefully, the members of Wolf Fong were all tall and strong. In comparison, Skinny Monkey, who weighed less than 50 kilograms, was an exception. However, not only did he become a member of Wolf Fong, but he was also the leader of Wolf Fong, Iron Tiger. This was because he had real skills in other aspects. For example, he was the one who entered the prince's residence to investigate. Relying on his small body, his qigong was very good, and he was also very agile. He was very suitable for spying. His skills were not difficult, but he also knew a lot of unorthodox ways. One of them was tomb raiding. Before joining Wolf Fong, he had followed others to rob tombs because of his small body. For example, he could squeeze into some narrow places. For this reason, he was more familiar with the structure of the underground secret passage than the other members. He led a small team of 10 people to search one house after another. His hand tapped on the first floor to see if it was different from the other floors. In this way, in a short period of time, when the others only searched 2 or 3 houses, he had already searched 7 or 8 houses with this method. Finally, he stepped into the house at the secret entrance. This was a storage room, and there were all kinds of daily necessities inside. A room like this looked no different from any other room. However, under Skinny Monkey's leadership, everyone still carefully checked every inch of the room. When he finally came to the corner of the room, in front of a pile of salt, he suddenly stopped. A faintly discernible shoe print was right below the salt bag. If it wasn't for the light of the torch, he was afraid that this oversight would have directly swept past it. Has anyone been here before? Skinny Monkey squatted down and asked the other members. Someone must have pushed the door open to check, but no one would search this corner. One of the team members answered aloud. Hee, this is interesting. Skinny Monkey agreed with this answer. It was because of this that his eyes became brighter. Someone, move this salt bag away. Be careful. Skinny Monkey was their captain. After the captain gave the order, a member immediately came forward and moved the salt bag away, revealing a flat ground. Just from the appearance alone, it was impossible to tell that it was different from other places. If this is the entrance, it's really ingenious. The Skinny Monkey-like man smiled with great interest. Then, he leaned forward and gently knocked on the floor a few times. A few echoes sounded, making a slightly crisp sound. This sound was completely different from the dull sound of knocking on the ground. When this sound came out, Skinny Monkey's smile became wider. Then he said with a very confident tone, "Go and call more people here. There's something here." This was also why Skinny Monkey was cautious. If the 3 provincial kings were really hiding here, in case there were any ambushes or traps, his group of 10 people was still too small. After Skinny Monkey gave the order, several groups of Special Forces members nearby rushed over. When the number of people reached 50, Skinny Monkey decisively got someone to find a heavy hammer and smashed it fiercely on the ground. He believed that there must be some kind of mechanism controlling this place, but he didn't have time to find it. He could only use the simplest method, violently smashing the door. Dang, 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 dang. Under the continuous smashing of the heavy hammer, a black hole with a diameter of nearly 1 meter appeared in front of everyone. At this moment, Skinny Monkey didn't need to say anything. A member suddenly jumped in and disappeared. In the underground secret room, Zhu Huiqi and Chen Tian were still talking about the outside world. From their conversation, they had already determined that the reinforcements were about to arrive, and they should be getting closer and closer to getting out. At this moment, a sound came out, causing Zhu Huiqi and Chen Tian's faces to gradually turn ugly. Obviously, they had thought of something, but before they could do anything, the crashing sound stopped and a figure appeared in their sight. Then, the Skinny Monkey-like figure jumped down and came to Zhu Huiqi and Chen Tian. Skinny Monkey had naturally seen Zhu Huiqi and Chen Tian before. When he saw the 2 of them, he couldn't help but grin. Capturing the 2 of them would definitely be a great achievement. Skinny Monkey suddenly appeared in the underground secret room from the sky, giving Zhu Huiqi and Chen Tian a shock. They didn't think that someone would discover their underground secret room. It should take a long time and extraordinary ability to find them. Not to mention whether or not the 5-star army had such talents, they had only occupied the 3 provinces with a small number of soldiers. Now, they should be facing the various armies that came to rescue the emperor. How would they have the time to look for them? On the bright side, the 5-star army that occupied the prince's mansion should have been surrounded by the emperor's army, or even killed. But what was going on now? At this moment, both Zhu Huiqi and Chen Tian's faces were very ugly. Chen Tian even intentionally rubbed his eyes. Obviously, even now, he still didn't think that all of this was real. Hee, the two of you don't have to doubt. You are now our captives. Of course, you can resist, but the consequences, will be very serious. Skinny Monkey said as he took out the military knife in his hand and played with it. It was as if he was saying, if you dare to act rashly, I won't be polite. Both Zhu Huiqi and Chen Tian were smart people, so how could they resist at this moment? Especially Zhu Huiqi, he was the king of 3 provinces and was also a member of the Zhu family. Even if he fell into Yang Qindong's hands, he wouldn't dare to hurt him. Chapter 1584. Just like what Yang Qindong thought before, as the people of the Great Ming Dynasty, they had their own pride. Perhaps it was because they had not come into contact with the outside world, they were simply short-sighted and narrow-minded. In the eyes of these people, the Great Ming Dynasty was the whole world. Anyone outside of the Great Ming Dynasty was a barbarian. They should look up to the Great Ming Dynasty, especially the people of the Zhu family, who were incomparably proud and arrogant. Even if Zhu Huiqin killed his brother, so what? That was their Zhu family's matter. Not to mention, he still had the title of the 3 kings. Based on this, as long as he didn't really rebel against the Great Ming Dynasty, even if he did something wrong, the emperor wouldn't do anything to him, let alone Bugnam of Gojoseon, who wouldn't dare to do anything to him. With this thought in mind, after a brief shock, Zhu Huiqin tidied up his robe and became arrogant again. Where is Bugnam of Gojoseon? This king wants to see him. Seeing that Zhu Huiqin had given up the intention to resist, the skinny monkey-like man immediately laughed, turned around and said, then please. When Zhu Huiqin reappeared in the main hall of the king's mansion, he was no longer the king, but a prisoner. Yang Qindong sat on the throne that Zhu Huiqi was supposed to sit on and looked down. This made the 3 provincial kings very uncomfortable when they entered the hall. Cough, Bugnam of Gojoseon. This king admits defeat in your hands this time. Say, what do you want? Of course, this prince will consider giving Yunnan province to you. But that's all. As for Guizhou and Guangxi, they will still belong to this prince. This is the biggest concession I can make. You should also know that the Southern Ming Dynasty will not agree to more. After entering the main hall, Zhu Huiqin said to Yang Qindong in a warning tone, giving people the feeling that Bugnam of Gojoseon had taken advantage of him. Hee. Yang Qindong couldn't help but laugh out loud. At this time, Zhu Huiqin still wanted to use the Southern Ming Empire to suppress him. Such a person's mind was completely corrupted by the Great Ming Empire. If it was described in Yang Qindong's words, then it was hopeless. Zhu Huiyun didn't know about this. Seeing Yang Qindong laughing, he thought that the other party was very satisfied with this result. He couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief. No matter what, he was still a prisoner. Although he believed that with the Southern Ming Empire as his backing and his surname being Zhu, Yang Qindong wouldn't have the guts to do anything to him. However, this was his own opinion. Who knew if this person would go crazy and suddenly attack him? Others might not know what kind of person he was in Nanming's eyes, but how could he not know? He killed his brothers and forced the Southern Ming Empire to make him the king of 3 provinces. It was hard to say that Zhu Qizhen didn't have any thoughts at all. Perhaps he could borrow Yang Qindong's hand to kill him, and Zhu Qizhen might even be happy. All right, since that's the case, please send someone to send this prince out of the city. Don't worry, since this prince has lost this time, I will admit defeat. I won't send anyone to seize Yunnan province. Zhu Huiyun thought that he had the upper hand and spoke with a magnanimous look. What he didn't know was that after these words, Yang Qindong couldn't help but laugh out loud again. When Chen Tian heard this laughter, his expression changed drastically. He had dealt with Yang Qindong more than once or twice, and he had never really gained any advantage. He didn't think that the other party would let things go so easily now that he had the initiative. Your Majesty, please don't say any more. Chen Tian felt that something was wrong. He stretched out his right hand and gently tugged on Zhu Huiyun's sleeve as he reminded him softly. HM? What's going on? Zhu Huiyun also felt that something was wrong, but he couldn't figure it out. There was no need for Zhu Huiyun to figure it out because Yang Qindong had already opened his mouth and said, Let you go? Zhu Huiyun, has your brain been eaten by a dog? Can't you see the situation clearly at this time? Ah, Yang Chendong, how can you say that? I'm a member of the imperial family with the surname Zhu, and I'm also the southern Ming emperor's king of the three provinces. How can you slander me here? Are you not afraid of angering the southern Ming dynasty and sending an army to destroy you? When he spoke to this point, Zhu Huiyun's voice unconsciously dropped a lot. In terms of righteousness, Yang Chendong was a subject of the great Ming dynasty. However, in reality, the current Yang Xie was already many times stronger than the great Ming dynasty. It was just that some people were unwilling to admit it. Then there was the problem. Even if Yang Chendong really did something to Zhu Huiyun, what did he do? Would the southern Ming dynasty start a war with Yang Xie because of this matter? Not to mention whether they could win or not. In the eyes of the southern Ming dynasty, Zhu Huiyun was not someone to be trifled with. He was not much different from a traitor. They probably wanted the two of them to fight. So how could they meddle in other people's business? This was also the reason why Zhu Huiyun's voice was getting softer and softer. After saying this, his aura was no longer as strong as before. Humph! Seeing that Zhu Huiyun had become more obedient, Yang Chendong began to flip out. Zhu Huiyun, who do you think you are? If you didn't have a good family, what are you now? For power, you even killed your own brother and brother. Aren't you afraid that you won't be able to enter your ancestral grave after death? Aren't you afraid that they are waiting for you on the ground with resentment? Zhu Huiyun, this time, you invited this king to discuss matters. You said that as long as this king came and expressed his sincerity, you would give the three provinces to this king. You also said that this would prevent the people of the three provinces from experiencing the flames of war. Look, you make it sound so nice, but what is the truth? When Yang Chendong said the word his voice raised by more than 2 octaves. Because of this, Zhu Huiyun's body trembled and his head lowered even more. However, Yang Chendong had no intention of letting him off easily. He continued to say, the truth is, ever since this king entered Yunnan Manor, you have always wanted to kill this king. You launched fierce attacks again and again. If it weren't for this king's strong warriors, I'm afraid that this king would be dead by now and end up like your brother and brother. Since you wanted to kill this prince, and now you've been captured by this prince, then tell me, do you think this matter will be resolved so easily? What do you want to do? Don't tell me you still want to harm this king? Hearing this, Zhu Huiyun could no longer be an ostrich. Harm you? Bah, you don't deserve it. Yang Chendong shook his head, then said in a resolute and unquestionable tone, what's the difference between killing you and killing an ant? When the time comes, this king only needs to tell the world that you were afraid because you did something wrong and committed suicide in the king's mansion. I'm sure this result will convince a lot of people and make many people believe it. At that time, tell me, who will care about a dead person? No. Zhu Huiyun's face changed drastically. It was not wrong for him to like power. In order to obtain power, he would do anything and kill countless people. However, this did not mean that he was not afraid of death. Killing others and being killed by others were two completely different concepts and results. What's wrong? Are you afraid? Seeing Zhu Huiyun's pale face, Yang Chendong knew that he had warned him enough. Next, it was time to ask for the result, which was what he wanted to know the most. Compared to this result, Zhu Huiyun's life and death really did not matter to him. He was just a king with the surname Zhu in the Great Ming Dynasty. In today's Great Ming Dynasty, there were dozens if not hundreds of kings like him. However, many of the kings were just in name. Not many people had the military power of 3 provinces like Zhu Huiyun. So what if he had the military power of 3 provinces? For Yang Chendong, who had already occupied Eastern Europe, the grasslands, Southeast Asia, and Central Asia, these 3 provinces had never been in his eyes. Zhu Huiyun, this king just wants to tell you that killing you is like killing an ant to this king. It's not a problem at all. Of course, if you can cooperate with this king and tell me everything you know, this king can still consider sparing your life. This, Yang Chendong threw out an olive branch, but Zhu Huiyun did not immediately agree. He was still wondering if Yang Chendong was trying to scare him. Without getting an answer immediately, Yang Chendong's eyes flashed with anger, then his gaze fell on Beta Persei beside him. The two had been together for many years and had already formed a certain tacit understanding. Beta Persei nodded, then strode into the hall and came to Zhu Huiyun's side. Without any explanation, he raised his hand and slashed down. An arm fell in the hall, and a wail from the bottom of his heart sounded. It hurts, it hurts. The voice came from Chen Tian's mouth. The slash just now had cut off his left arm. This sudden slash was completely out of Zhu Huiyun's expectations. When he saw the bloody arm falling at his feet, he instinctively jumped to the side, but at the same time, cold sweat began to flow from his forehead unknowingly. After Beta Persei swung his sword, his gaze fell on Zhu Huiyun, as if to say, "What do you think? Do you want me to slash you too?" Although Beta Persei did not say anything, everything was just a warning from his eyes. But Zhu Huiyun did not dare to take the risk. He immediately shouted, "Don't kill me, don't kill me. Bugnam of Gojosian, whatever you want to ask, I'll say it, I'll say it." In fear and horror, Zhu Huiyun did not even have the courage to call himself this king. Yang Chendong smiled with satisfaction and said, "This prince will give you a chance. Tell me about Imo Gue. Who is his master?" Imo Gue nodded. Yang Chendong didn't know what to say, but he didn't know what to say. Chapter 1585. Compared to the external threat, Yang Chendong was more concerned about the traitor. He wouldn't be able to sleep peacefully until the traitor was eliminated. Now that Imo Gue was dead, the only person who had interacted with him was Zhu Huiyun. He had to get an answer from this person. With Chen Tian's missing arm in front of him, Zhu Huiyun naturally answered all the questions. However, he knew very little about Imo Gue, but he didn't dare to not answer, nor did he dare to speak carelessly. He could only give a detailed account of the first time he met Imo Gue and the last time he met him. An hour passed. When he was done, Zhu Huiyun spread his hands and said, "I only know that there is a mysterious force supporting Imo Gue. As for who it is, I really don't know." Yang Chendong naturally believed him. He didn't expect Zhu Huiyun to be so careful. Imo Gue had never mentioned the identity of his master. He originally thought that he would be able to find traces of his master. Now, it seemed impossible. However, even though he believed that Zhu Huiyun wouldn't lie to him, it didn't mean that he wouldn't ask more. Chen Tiangong's bleeding had been stopped, and Yang Chendong had put the same problem on him. Chen Tian didn't know as much as Zhu Huiyun. However, in order not to get hurt again, he told Zhu Huiyun everything he knew. The facts proved that Zhu Huiyun wasn't lying. This result made Yang Chendong unhappy. There were still no clues about the traitor. Yang Chendong could only put it aside. Now that things had come to this, it was better to solve the problem of the three provinces first. Zhu Huiyun's capture meant that the overall situation was settled. Now, it was time to tie up the loose ends. Chen Tian, I'll give you a mission. If you complete it well, you can live. If you don't need to keep your other arm. Chen Tian's face was still pale because he had lost too much blood, and also because he was scared. After knowing that Yang Chendong was daring and did not take him seriously, Chen Tian became as obedient as a dog and said, "Please instruct me, Bugnam of Gojosian." Satisfied with Chen Tian's performance, Yang Chendong said, "I now order you to be this king's envoy. Go and meet General Ming and persuade him to surrender." The prince's mansion was on fire, followed by thick smoke. This was a call for help. Everyone who saw this scene had different thoughts. However, there was one person who wanted to go back to help, but he no longer had the ability to do so. This person was General Wang Zhanjiang. Wang Zhanjiang was a typical general of the great Ming dynasty. He had a foolishly loyal heart. In his eyes, she had received Zhu Huiyun's kindness, so she was his person in life and his ghost in death. Therefore, he was more anxious than anyone else when he saw that the Wang residence was in trouble. However, with the black cavalry firing their muskets on the inside and the traitorous soldiers and civilians on the outside, he was caught in the middle and was in a dilemma. If he couldn't even protect himself, how could he save others? "Charge, send everyone. No matter what, we have to rush into the small courtyard. As long as we capture Bugnam of Gojosian, everything will be solved." Wang Zhanjiang thought of the simplest way to solve everything, which was to capture Yang Chendong alive, and then use him to exchange for the three provinces' king. Wang Zhanjiang gave orders like a madman, then led the army to charge. Under his lead, the remaining 10,000 soldiers of the three provinces' army rushed toward the small courtyard like a tide. Even though they were constantly hit by firearms and fell to the ground in the process of charging, the tide of people was still like a wave without stopping. The power of firearms was greater in deterrence. When the opponents came without regard for their lives, the Black Cavalry, which had less than 500 people, finally felt a strong pressure. Second brother, we can't go on like this. Let's break through. Dao Xiao hurriedly came to Beta Persei's side to ask for instructions. Up until now, the Black Cavalry soldiers' arms were sore, numb, and swollen. Anyone who had been in the military or had experience with guns would know that shooting a gun was a very physically taxing thing. The continuous gunshots were also a test of the human body's physical fitness. This was because the Black Cavalry soldiers had better physical fitness. If it were an ordinary person, they would have been unable to shoot because their arms could not bear the force. A small number of the 500 Black Cavalry soldiers were injured, but most of them had reached their physical limits, especially when their arms were numb and they could no longer shoot. Even if they forced themselves to hold the gun, they had already lost their aim. Then let's break through. Beta Persei was also a little surprised by the stubbornness of the three provinces' army. But fortunately, the young master was no longer here, so he did not have to stay here and not move. Organize those who can still shoot and let them be responsible for covering the retreat of the others. We'll break through to the east. After Beta Persei gave the order, those who were supposed to set up the booby traps did so. The soldiers who were supposed to retreat also lined up, and the injured soldiers were supported by their comrades to the east. Beta Persei's decision was very decisive and caught the three provinces' army off guard. The east side was the main target of the attack, and a hole was quickly opened. Beta Persei and the others took the opportunity to leave. General Wang Zhanjiang, who was left behind, finally rushed into the small courtyard with the soldiers. Quick, surround this place. Don't let a single one escape. Finally, he rushed into the small courtyard. At this moment, Wang Zhanjiang's face was full of excitement. He seemed to see the scene of capturing Yang Chendong alive, and then saving Zhu Huiwan, becoming the first hero. Boom, boom, boom. Boom, boom, boom. The booby traps left behind were triggered, causing a series of explosions. Hundreds of soldiers from the three provinces' army were killed or injured by the explosions. But Wang Zhanjiang did not care about all of this. In his eyes, all of this was just the Black Cavalry's last resistance. Quick, charge in. They don't have any power to resist. Charge in. Other than Wu and Wang, kill everyone else. Kill them all. After losing so many people, he could finally get his revenge. Wang Zhanjiang had been suppressing his anger for a long time, but it was destined that his idea would not come true. When Wang Zhanjiang rushed into the small courtyard with the soldiers from the three provinces, he saw that there was no one there. Not to mention Yang Chendong's figure, there was not even a corpse of a dead 5-star army soldier. What's going on? Faced with this result, Wang Zhanjiang felt his mind go blank. He could not understand why this was happening. Reality did not give him more time to think, because soon after, a soldier came to report that the courtyard was surrounded by the rebel army and civilians. In other words, they were now the prey and had nowhere to run. How many people do we have left? Wang Zhanjiang's face changed when he heard that they were surrounded. But he did not give up on the idea of breaking out. As long as he still had his strength, there was still a chance for him to break out. General, we only have about 3,000 people left. This answer made Wang Zhanjiang's face change. Then, like a zombie that had its energy sucked out of his body, he fell to the ground with a plop. He knew that this time, it was completely over. Nearly 15,000 soldiers fought with no regard for their lives and did not care about the heavy losses. Until now, there were only about 3,000 people left. On the contrary, there were more than 20,000 rebels and civilians outside. He knew that this was a complete failure. Wang Zhanjiang did not believe that the 3,000 people he brought with him would have the strength of the Black Cavalry to be able to break out of the heavy encirclement. The general had lost his fighting spirit and hope. The other soldiers looked at each other and also lost their fighting spirit. Some of them even looked at Wang Zhanjiang and were ready to make a move. It was every man for himself, and it was time for him to fight for himself. A few hours later, around noon, the soldiers under Wang Zhanjiang's command rebelled, and he was killed in the courtyard. No one would have thought that the place that was supposed to be Yang Qindong's burial ground would become Wang Zhanjiang's burial ground. With Wang Zhanjiang's death, the remaining soldiers from the 3 provinces abandoned their weapons and surrendered. They were taken over by Cheng Hu's soldiers and civilians. This was not the only piece of good news. Chen Tian also brought Ming over. After learning that the 5-star army could keep him and his family alive, and that he could keep 10% of the wealth for his own use, Ming chose to surrender. The exception was the 10,000 Miao soldiers outside the city. Under the leadership of Miao King Wu Ying-tu, they escaped in advance. Clearly, he also saw that the situation was turning for the worse. However, considering the various conflicts he had with the 5-star army, he did not believe that the other party would let him off so easily. Thus, he chose to flee, choosing to head to the Chuxiong Manor to meet up with General Luo Guan, Brigadier General Rajiv, Azad, Hack, and the others. In just one night, Yunnan Manor changed hands. The original owner, Zhu Huihua, became a prisoner, and Yang Qindong, who was surrounded and killed, became the owner here. Beta Persei rushed to Yang Qindong with a telegram and reported, "Young master, the latest news is that 80,000 enemies have appeared in the west of the city. They are heading towards Yunnan Manor. If there are no accidents, they will reach the west wall in 2 hours." Previously, Beta Persei led the Black Cavalry to break out of the encirclement and then met up with Commander Cheng Hu and the others who were outside. Then, he came to the 3 provinces and walked to Yang Qindong's side. It was also because of Beta Persei's timely breakout that the Black Cavalry did not suffer any major losses. After a few days of fighting, the 500 Black Cavalry only lost 3 people in battle and more than 20 were injured. Most of the soldiers were just overly tired. Once they had enough time to rest, they would immediately be full of energy. 80,000? After Yang Qindong heard this, his expression did not change. He knew that this was the last force that Zhu Huihua left in Yunnan province. There was nothing to be afraid of against an enemy that had no backup. As long as they defended the city and stabilized the situation, victory would eventually be theirs. Chapter 1586. How many people can we mobilize? Yang Qindong asked Beta Persei, thinking that they would need an army to defend the city. "Young master, we have about 40,000 soldiers at our disposal. Among them, 30,000 are surrendered soldiers. However, not many of them are capable of fighting. There are also several tens of thousands of commoners. If we call upon them, they can also go up the tower to help." Hearing this answer, Yang Qindong knew that it would not be easy to rely on these people to defend the city. So he continued to ask, "Where are our reinforcements?" The closest one is the 20,000 reinforcements led by Yao Ingjun. They have already arrived at Chujing Prefecture in the northeast. They will arrive before noon tomorrow. The fastest one is the world's first cavalry army. They have already passed Yuanjiang Prefecture. If there are no accidents, they will arrive tomorrow night. There are also the other main reinforcements. They will arrive in about 2 to 4 days. Beta Persei reported to Yang Qindong with the timetable calculated by Wang Shan. "So, we can only rely on ourselves from today until noon tomorrow?" When Yang Qindong said this, the corner of his mouth trembled slightly. He thought to himself, "This is good. Let the people here see the cruelty of war, and let them know that peace is not easy to come by. Beta Persei, go find Yang San and Commander Cheng Hu. Send out all the surrendered soldiers from the 3 provinces, as well as the civilians who can go up the city. Let them go up the city. Don't be afraid of spending money, and don't be afraid of dying. It is time to let some people see the benefits of joining Yang Xie." Yang Qindong said as if he had made some kind of decision. Beta Persei nodded heavily. He already understood Yang Qindong's meaning and knew what to do. With this order, the entire Yunnan prefecture became busy again. Yang San, who had been hiding in the dark, also appeared in front of everyone with a group of secret agents. They began to mobilize the civilians to go up the city tower to defend the city. It must be said that the 3 provinces were ruled by the 3 provinces' king, Zhu Huifeng, and many soldiers were recruited over the years. However, most of them were recruited to recruit able-bodied men. It was completely different from Yang San's recruitment process, where anyone who agreed to go up the tower to defend the city would be given silver. When the shining piles of silver were placed under the city gates, the enthusiasm of the citizens surged. It was said that money could move the gods. Now it seemed that it was true. Under the temptation of the silver, more and more civilians joined the army to defend the city. Among them were some middle-aged men over 40 years old. Normally, when the three provinces' kings were looking for able-bodied men, they would not be the target. But when there was silver to be taken, they actually took the initiative to join the army. The notice, the soldiers, the soldiers, the soldiers, the soldiers who were the soldiers, they were the soldiers who were the soldiers. It was clearly written that the soldiers only needed to hold on until noon the next day. Once the reinforcements from the 5-star army arrived, they would be considered to have completed their mission. Furthermore, they would not need to return the silver to the person who completed the mission. In the end, it was just one day. Every person who joined the army would be able to receive 5 taels of silver. To the commoners, this was no different from a pie falling from the sky. As a poor commoner, there were naturally not many people who would reject such an opportunity. The result of the recruitment was far beyond the expectations of Beta Persei, Yang San, and the others. When they saw that there were 40,000 civilians, as well as the surrendered soldiers, they all joined the mission to defend the city because of the silver. When the number of soldiers expanded to 80,000, they reported this to Yang Chendong. Hee, do you see that? This is the strength of the civilians. Think about how ridiculous it is for those who treat the civilians as ants. Yang Chendong said with emotion. Then, he handed the command of the defense to Beta Persei. Yang San was in charge of logistics. Beta Persei was naturally excited when he received the command of the defense. First, he found Cheng Hu and the soldiers of Lung Feng's 1st Army, 1st Division, and 1st Regiment, and made them the backbone of the army. After a simple distribution of 80,000 soldiers, he went up the city gate tower and waited for the enemy to appear so that they could fight. Miao King Wu Yingtu saw that the situation was not good and fled. It was in the process of retreating that he encountered Yunnan's great general Luo Guan and 40,000 soldiers of the original Gula army. At that moment, 80,000 of them gathered together and headed straight for Yunnan Manor. And this was the power in the open. In the dark, Shiping King Mubin also led 10,000 soldiers to the foot of Yunnan Manor. Ever since he received the message that Zhu Huichun had begun to attack Yang Chendong 3 days ago, Shiping King Mubin could not sit still. Thinking that when 2 tigers fought, one of them would definitely be injured, and with the intention of benefiting from the fight, he led the 10,000 elite soldiers of the West Pacifying Army to travel day and night. Finally, they arrived outside the southern Cloud Prefecture city without alerting anyone. Having lived in Yunnan Manor for generations, he knew the terrain like the back of his hand. He knew where the paths were and where the rivers were. It was because of this advantage that even Yang Xie's intelligence department did not know about the appearance of the Shiping army. It had to be said that this was the advantage of being a local snake. After arriving outside Yunnan Manor without anyone knowing, the scouts sent out found out that the 3 provincial armies were about to arrive at the city gates. The 5-star army in the city was also actively guarding against them. So the war is about to start. Then we just have to wait. Hearing the news, Mubin quickly suppressed his intention to take action. As for the missing Zhu Huichun, the 3 provinces' king, he did not care at all. Without the king of the 3 provinces, Southern Cloud Prefecture would be his lair. If he had been actively defending himself all these years, he might have been able to fight against the 5-star army. It was all because of this person that his plan was delayed. Mubin did not have a good impression of Zhu Huichun. This was a typical shirking of responsibility. If he could not do something well, he would always find all kinds of excuses to blame others. This was also a sign of irresponsibility. Yunnan Manor was currently heavily guarded. It was not a suitable time for him to attack. Shiping King could wait. He was like a venomous snake in a dark corner. When the time was right, he would open his mouth and bite to achieve his goal. As for Luo Guan's troops, a group of 80,000 soldiers rushed over. Finally, they arrived outside the west city of Yunnan Manor just after noon. Then, the army got into formation. Perhaps they had also received news that the 5-star army's reinforcements were on their way. They did not have time to build catapults. They only took out some siege ladders. As the war drums of the three armies beat, they got into formation to attack the city. On the west city tower of Yunnan Manor, the surrendered soldiers and civilians looked at the mighty three provinces army that was in formation outside the city. Everyone had a bitter expression. Previously, they were tempted by the money that made them forget everything and join the army. However, when they saw the huge formation of the enemy, they realized that it was not easy to get the money. However, since he had received the money, he had to do something. Otherwise, even if the three provincial armies didn't attack the city, the inspection team arranged by the five-star army in the city wouldn't let him off. Forget it. Let's do it. There are so many of us. Let's not be afraid. Even if they could not figure it out, the soldiers had to think it through. When they saw so many of their comrades standing around them, they could only cheer themselves up. This was also the thought of many of the soldiers guarding the city. Beta Persei and Yang Sen also saw this scene. Haha. Yang San laughed and said to Beta Persei, "Second brother, it seems that the morale of your soldiers is a little low. They are all new recruits. Many of them have not even seen blood. It's not a big deal for them to behave like this," Beta Persei said magnanimously. Although the morale of his 80,000 soldiers was indeed low, Beta Persei was not worried that the three provinces' army outside the city would attack the city. After all, the military strength of both sides was basically equal. In addition, they were the ones defending the city, so they had a natural advantage. Among the soldiers, there were the backbone of the Cold Front Regiment. The other party did not have heavy weapons to attack the city. No matter how he looked at it, his side had too much of an advantage. Seeing how confident Beta Persei was, Yang San was not worried anymore. After reminding him that the sword had no eyes, he went down the city tower to prepare food. Zhu Huihua had done some good things. For example, there was a lot of food stored in the city's warehouse. This was originally for his recruitment and independence, but now it was all given to Yang San. With these things, he could make incomparably delicious food. Presumably, under the stimulation of delicious food, the morale of the soldiers should also be improved. Okay, go and prepare more meat. I will use this to encourage the soldiers. Beta Persei naturally knew the importance of food to the soldiers. He smiled and sent Yang San away. Then, he ordered someone to call Cheng Hu and instructed him that if the city tower was in danger, the backbone of the Cold Front Regiment would have to personally come out and kill the enemies on top of the city. Second brother, don't worry. It's only because the sixth young master didn't allow firearms. Otherwise, we wouldn't even need these people. Our Cold Front Regiment alone is enough to defend the city without losing it. If it's done well, we can even launch a counterattack. Cheng Hu replied confidently. Haha, I know your Cold Front Regiment is powerful. However, the sixth young master also wants these people to see blood. Sometimes, no amount of education is as good as experiencing it yourself. So, let's not use firearms. Unless the situation is out of our control, tell the soldiers that no one is to use firearms. Beta Persei, of course, knew how powerful the Cold Front Regiment was. This regiment, which was called a typical regiment by the outside world, was only second to the Black Cavalry in terms of combat ability. The city tower was ready. The soldiers of the three provinces outside the city also launched their attack. They already knew that the defenders were made up of surrendered soldiers and ordinary civilians. There were no real elite forces like the five-star army. This made them feel relieved. Chapter 1587. The five-star army had fought battles all over the country and had already made a great name for themselves. If it was the 80,000 five-star army here, they would have already fled without even fighting. However, the 80,000 surrendered soldiers and commoners were completely different. In their eyes, they were a proper army. If they couldn't even defeat these five-star army, then all their training would have been in vain. Therefore, when they charged, the might of the three provinces' army was still very fierce. They didn't care about the arrows that were shot down from the city tower. They charged up the city walls with minimal losses, then set up countless scaling ladders and began to attack the city. Commoners who hadn't been trained could only shoot arrows. As for how far they could shoot and whether they could hit people, it was still too extravagant. Therefore, in the first wave of counterattack, the defending side didn't perform well. It wasn't until they saw countless scaling ladders on the city tower that countless enemies began to climb up with the help of the scaling ladders. When some of them were about to charge up, the defending soldiers became afraid. They didn't dare to imagine how many of them could survive in close combat. Don't panic. Take the prepared sleepers and throw them down. Quick. Chenghu was in charge of commanding the front lines. Seeing the enemy attack so smoothly, he couldn't help but shout out anxiously. Under his shout, Fengzhan, Wang Jinlong, Su Digang, Hu Jun, Sun Dawei, and the other battalion commanders hid in the crowd and played their roles. Countless sleepers were thrown down from the city tower, smashing into the heads or bodies of the soldiers of the 3 provinces who were climbing up with the help of the scaling ladders. One by one, black figures fell from the sky and let out miserable cries. The sleepers' attack disintegrated the first wave of attacks of the 3 provinces' army. After throwing down over 1,000 corpses, the 3 provinces' army had no choice but to retreat. The first wave of attacks of the enemy was defeated so easily. The cheers of tens of thousands of people could be heard from the city tower. Obviously, the victory came so quickly that it greatly exceeded the expectations of the defending soldiers, especially the commoners. They were originally a little nervous, but now they realized that the battle wasn't as difficult as they thought. Their confidence began to swell, and their morale began to rise. However, the experienced officers like Chenghu did not let down their guard. They knew that this was just a probing attack by the enemy, and the bitter battle was still to come. Despite the failure of the first wave of attacks, the soldiers of the 3 provinces did not show any signs of low morale. It was just a probing attack. This was a common tactic. He really didn't know why the civilians guarding the city were cheering so enthusiastically. Those who didn't know would think that the enemy had eliminated their main force. That's enough. You've all seen it just now. The soldiers guarding the city have mediocre combat strength. The arrows they shot were weak and powerless. This kind of army can't possibly be a match for our elite regular army. So, from now on, I ask everyone to buck up and unleash your strongest combat strength. As the one who led the most troops, Rajiv undoubtedly became the leader of the crowd. He looked at the other generals as he spoke, as if his words were military orders. Of these 80,000 men, Rajiv led 30,000 men, Luo Guan led 20,000 men, and Azad, Hak, and Wu Yingtu led 10,000 men each. Thus, they managed to gather an army of 80,000, forming a sizable force. Because his country, Bangra, had already been destroyed by the 5-star army, and his country had also announced its surrender. At this moment, Rajiv was already homeless. Now, he had no way to escape except to trust the king of the 3 provinces, Zhu Huihua. Until now, he still didn't know that Zhu Huihua had been captured by Yang Chenong. He still wanted to rush into Yunnan Prefecture, drive the 5-star army out of here, and then find Zhu Huihua as soon as possible. Then, both sides would cooperate. This way, he would have a place to live. All of this was due to Rajiv's own thoughts. As the king of the 3 provinces, even if he couldn't beat the enemy, he still had a way to save his life. Perhaps Zhu Huihua was now hiding in a corner of Yunnan Prefecture, waiting for him to rescue him. The generals were now homeless. Only by uniting could they form a joint force and not be easily bullied. It was under such circumstances that Rajiv took the initiative to stand up. No one had any doubts and were willing to listen to his command. Now that Rajiv had given the order, everyone knew that under the current situation, they could only survive by taking down Yunnan Prefecture and saving Zhu Huihua. Therefore, no one had any objections and agreed to this decision. When the force was concentrated in one place, it was still very powerful. When the army launched another siege, it was no longer a probing move. Instead, it was a real assault. More and more soldiers rushed to the city walls and began to climb up using scaling ladders. More and more wooden sleepers were thrown down. This was not the first time they had used these ladders. Not good. The pillows are useless. After throwing out the wooden sleepers, many people found that the effect was not as good as they had expected. Although the 3 provincial armies also suffered casualties, they did not retreat. Instead, they continued to climb up the ladder. Many people began to panic. Don't panic. Throw down the kerosene. Fengzhan and the others in the crowd looked at the performance of the people inside. Fortunately, they were not soldiers under their command. Otherwise, they would have trained them well and let them know how red the flowers were. With this shout, countless kerosene was poured down from the sky and poured on the soldiers of the 3 provinces who were still under the ladders. Waves of mournful screams were heard. The siege, which had been going smoothly, could not help but stagnate. This was a real siege in ancient times. Without powerful heavy weapons like cannons, every time they wanted to attack a city, they would have to pay a heavy price. With the help of the kerosene, the 3 provinces were once again defeated. The people on the city wall could not help but cheer again. The 2 consecutive victories made them look down on their opponents again. However, what they did not know was that both the kerosene and the pillows were auxiliary weapons to defend the city. In the end, if they wanted to defend the city, they still needed to rely on force. As expected, after a short break, the 3rd siege began. This time, neither the sleepers nor the kerosene were intimidated by the soldiers of the 3 provinces. A small number of them began to rush up the city walls. For the first time, the 2 sides engaged in close-range combat. Because the 3 provinces were the ones attacking the city, there were not many soldiers who rushed up the city wall tower. In the end, they were all beaten down by the people and the surrendered soldiers. If not for this, in a one-on-one battle, the defending side would have lost. After a few consecutive charges, both sides suffered losses. When the sky turned dark, the 2 sides temporarily stopped fighting. They began to eat and accumulate strength. Yang San, the chief steward in charge of logistics, came. Under his leadership and organization, countless women in the city got busy. They prepared a large amount of delicious food and sent it to the city gate tower. There were fresh soup and meatballs, which really filled the soldiers' stomachs. Everyone, eat your fill. There is plenty of food. Only when you are full will you have the strength to fight. When we win, everyone will be heroes. There will be even more delicious food waiting for you. Yang San ordered people to carry the food up while encouraging everyone. The fragrance of the meat spread in all directions. When the soldiers smelled it, they involuntarily swallowed their saliva. All these years, it was said that the southern Ming dynasty ruled this place. However, in reality, Zhu Huixin, who held the military power, was the real ruler. He was a person who only had ambition and political means. He did not have the slightest idea of developing the economy. Under Zhu Huixin's rule, food had to be imported from Yangtze most of the time. It was easy to imagine what kind of life the people here were living. It was not an exaggeration to say that every year when spring came, even the tree bark would be gnawed off. Under such circumstances, it was easy to imagine the lives of the people. Not to mention eating meat, they had not even eaten rice for a long time. Now that the meatballs were brought up, whether it was the surrendered soldiers or the people, their eyes lit up. If not for the cold front soldiers watching from the side, they would have reached out to snatch them. Don't worry, don't worry. Everyone has a share, everyone has a share. Yang Sen chuckled and ordered basin after basin of delicious food to be brought up to the tower and placed in front of everyone. Food for tens of thousands of people was definitely a considerable amount. Fortunately, there were enough women in the city. When Yang San said that he was willing to help cook and provide a full meal, there weren't too many applicants. Almost half of the women in the city came over. With the help of these people, the cooking was naturally not difficult. In the end, they requisitioned a lot of iron pots and basins before they barely completed the task. When the delicacies were brought up, the sound of people eating could be heard everywhere. The sound of people smacking their lips was very satisfying and made them feel incomparably hungry. On the tower, the fragrance of the meat was carried by the wind and drifted to the barracks of the 3 provinces. Immediately, the sound of people swallowing their saliva was heard. Even General Rajiv's face darkened at this moment. This is simply a provocation. They are showing off. Rajiv stood up and looked at the tower of Yunnan Manor with a fierce face. He lowered his head and looked at the dry rations and the clear water he was eating. He was in a bad mood. Don't eat anymore. Prepare to charge. Tell the soldiers that there is delicious food waiting for us in Yunnan Manor. As long as we capture the city, there will be meat to eat. Rajiv angrily ordered the army to continue attacking the city. The movements of the three provinces under the tower were quickly seen by the soldiers on the tower. Curses immediately sounded. Damn it, they actually don't want us to eat properly. These bastards. I haven't eaten my fill yet, and they are coming. Are they rushing to their deaths? Chapter 1588. Cutting off my food supply is the same as killing me. Come, watch how I chop off your heads and kick them like a chamber pot. On the city tower, more and more soldiers expressed their dissatisfaction. In an instant, the crowd was enraged and the soldiers' morale rose by a few steps. Looking at this scene, Yongsan chuckled and immediately said, "Everyone, don't be anxious. Fight well. There will be supper delivered in the middle of the night. However, everyone must defend and not let the enemy attack. Otherwise, not only will there be no food to eat, even the safety of your family in the city will not be guaranteed." Hearing that there would be supper at night, many soldiers immediately felt their bodies were filled with energy. One by one, they shouted, "Don't worry, with us here, we will defend our home. With this meal, our lives will be sold to the 5-star army. Yes, we will definitely defend the city with our lives and not let the 3 provincial armies take a step forward. Defend Yunnan Manor with our lives and kill all the enemies. Defend Yunnan Manor and kill all the enemies." On the city tower, the morale of the soldiers was even higher. Under such circumstances, the 3 provincial armies launched a siege. One could imagine what the outcome would be. In the following process of the charge, the soldiers of the 3 provinces truly experienced what it meant to change. It felt as if their opponent had suddenly changed. After countless of their comrades had died in battle, Yunnan Manor still stood in front of them without any signs of wavering. After a night of fierce battle, the 3 provincial armies showed a trace of fatigue. Originally, they thought that after their 80,000-strong army arrived at Yunnan Manor, they would be able to easily take down the city. After all, the news said that Yang Chendong only brought 500 black cavalry with him. Even if they had enviable firearms in their hands, this small number of people was only enough for them to protect themselves. Who would have thought that after fighting until now, not only had they not taken down Yunnan Manor, they had not even seen the person in charge. Their opponents were just some surrendered soldiers who had no choice but to, in addition to some ordinary citizens in the city and the older ones. This kind of blow really made Rajiv and the others a little disappointed. They even began to doubt their own fighting strength. What's going on? How is it that Yang Chendong is able to unleash such powerful combat prowess? General Luo Guan asked in the main tent with a puzzled expression. Since it wasn't that his combat power wasn't good enough, then he could just find another reason to blame it all on Yang Chendong's command. This was a very good choice. No one knew how to answer this question. The morale of the people in the tent began to plummet. In fact, things were not as bad as they had imagined. As the defenders of the city, they had also paid a heavy price. After an afternoon and a night of intensive attacks, more than 10,000 surrendered soldiers were killed or injured. The civilians were even worse off. The number of casualties reached 20,000. This was the difference between untrained and trained. Those who had been trained would naturally be able to borrow strength and cooperate with each other. Those who had not been trained would only rely on their brute strength. If it weren't for Long Feng's occasional attacks on the city walls, the city might not have been able to defend itself. Of course, this had a lot to do with the short amount of time they had to defend the city. Yang Chendong had promised everyone that he would only defend the city for 1 day and 1 night. Once the reinforcements arrived, they wouldn't have to risk their lives anymore. It was because of this hope that everyone could continue to persevere. Even though many of the civilians were still vomiting after seeing the blood, they endured it when they thought about how they would be able to return home with their silver. On the other hand, if there wasn't a time limit, their hearts would have been in chaos. Rajiv and the others didn't know this. They understood that the city was very difficult to attack, and the 5-star army's reinforcements were about to arrive. They had reached a point where they had to make a decision. They could either continue to attack the city and charge without caring about their losses, or they could take advantage of the fact that the 5-star army's reinforcements hadn't arrived and immediately retreat as far away as possible to preserve their limited strength. As for what to do, the generals looked at each other and didn't make a final decision. Report, Just when everyone didn't know what to do, a messenger entered the main tent. Report, a young man who claims to be Mu Song is outside the tent. He says he has an important matter to discuss with all of you. Mu Song? The eldest son of Sheeping King Mu Bin. Luo Guan and Wu Ying too looked at each other. Others didn't know, but they knew this person's identity. Next, Luo Guan explained Mu Song's identity to Rajiv and the others. After hearing that this person had Sheeping King's background, hope reappeared in Rajiv's eyes. Quickly, invite him in. At this time, Mu Song suddenly appeared outside the tent. Even if one thought with their toes, it was obvious why he was here. In the past, Sheeping King was also a potential enemy of the three provincial kings. If this person dared to appear, he would definitely be captured alive. But now that there was a powerful person like Bugnam of Gojoseon, infighting was impossible. They should be thinking about how to unite. Under the guidance of the messenger, the extraordinary Mu Song walked into the main tent. As a minister and general of the Ming dynasty, the great-grandson of Qian Ning King Mu Ying, the grandson of King Ding Yuan Mu Cheng, and the son of Duke Qian Mu Bin, as well as the future third-generation Duke Qian, he had a strong noble aura. Just by walking in, his extraordinary aura was revealed. Especially the smile on his face. It gave people a feeling like a spring breeze. In fact, after the ministers of the Ming dynasty, there were very few idiots, especially those who were groomed by big families to inherit the mantle. They had to undergo all kinds of training from a very young age. This was also the reason why the nobles could last for hundreds of years. The so-called existence was reasonable. The nobles were able to survive under the constant replacement of the ministers and the constant change of the emperor. They also had to put in quite a bit of effort behind the scenes. Mu Song, who had been trained as a successor since he was young, had been learning skills since he was 3 years old. Now, although he was only 17 years old, the aura around him was already not something normal people could compare to. After entering the tent, Mu Song first inspected everyone before cupping his hands in greeting. When he greeted Ravji and the others one by one, he called out everyone's names. Without being introduced, he could clearly recognize everyone. This was enough to prove his skills and also showed that Mu Song had done quite a bit of work in secret. Like this, Mu Song's first impression of him was quite good. Rafi spoke up and gave them a seat. The 6 of them sat down together. After Mu Song sat down, Rafi looked at Luo Guan. The only Han general asked, "But I wonder why young Master Mu is here?" This was clearly a consultant who knew what was going on, but no one had any doubts about this statement. Even if everyone had guessed Mu Song's intentions, they couldn't just say, "What, are you here to help us?" "That's great. We're very grateful. Please make your move quickly. Just tell us what you need and we'll agree to it." How could Mu Song not sense that Luo Guan was probing? He immediately smiled and said, "Generals, this young master is here on my father's orders to assist you in taking down Yunnan Manor." Everyone couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief when their intentions were revealed. Even if they had guessed it, it had a completely different meaning when it came from Mu Song's mouth. But what does His Highness King Sheeping want to do? This time, Rafi took the initiative to ask before Luo Guan could speak. It was clear that this person was indeed anxious. Seeing Rafi's hopeful eyes, Mu Song chuckled. Then, he opened his folding fan and said with grace, "Generals, the current situation is very critical. The 5-star army's reinforcements are about to arrive. The earliest wave might appear outside the battlefield in a few hours. In other words, there isn't much time left. If we still can't take down Yunnan Manor, have you considered the following situation?" "Situation? What situation?" Rafi asked with an unsightly expression. Seeing that the other party didn't want to face this question, Mu Song chuckled and said, "Generals, Bugnam of Gojoseon has already arrived at Yunnan Manor. The next step is to solve the problem of the 3 provinces. Now that the 3 provincial kings are still alive, it means that Bugnam of Gojoseon has no opponents here. Once the main force of the 5-star army arrives, with his personality, how could he tolerate the existence of generals here? I'm afraid a large-scale cleanup operation will be imperative at that time, right?" Everyone's expression sank. This was exactly what they were worried about. If they didn't consider this problem, they would have already retreated. Why would they be stuck in a dilemma here? Since no one objected, Mu Song continued, Now that Bangla has been destroyed by Bugnam of Gojoseon and the 3 provincial kings are missing, everyone has become rootless duckweeds. If we don't think of a way to join a new faction, we can't think of any other outcome other than being destroyed. Oh, right. You don't have to think about where you can't go in the world. Hee. The truth is that other than Nanming, the surrounding areas have been occupied by the 5-star army. Even if you want to go, you don't have a direction. Rajiv's and the others' faces turned uglier and uglier as they listened to Lin Yun's words. Faced with this kind of humiliating words, they really wanted to object. However, they helplessly found that what Mu Tsung said was right. Even if they wanted to refute, they didn't know what to say. Everyone's silence was enough to explain the problem. Mu Tsung knew that the time had come, so he opened his mouth again and tried to recruit. Generals, there are only 2 paths in front of you now. First, immediately surrender to Bugnam of Gojoseon, and you might be able to keep your life. But forget about glory and wealth. To be honest, with your actions and the fact that you attacked the city, it's already good enough that you can keep your life. As for the second path, it's to join my banner. As long as you're willing to join, you'll be a general of Nanming. My father can guarantee your safety and your current position. After all, no matter how powerful Bugnam of Gojoseon is, he's still a subject of the great Ming. How can a subject provoke his master? Chapter 1589. The matter was finally made clear. Mu Tsung didn't seem to be in a hurry for everyone to express their stance. Instead, he put away his folding fan and slowly sipped on the tea on the table. However, from time to time, his eyes would vaguely sweep across the crowd, indicating that his heart was not calm at all. Coming as a lobbyist this time was also a risk. No one knew what Loveji and the others were thinking. What if they were prepared to surrender to Yang Chendong? Then wouldn't he be walking right into a trap and be captured to take credit? Although the possibility of this was very low, it was still possible. Therefore, Sheeping King Mu Bin didn't agree to Mu Tsung coming as a lobbyist until Mu Tsung said it was a critical moment of survival. Yunnan Manor was where the Mu family had lived for generations. Without this place, they would have no roots, no weight, and no influence in the southern Ming Empire. For the Mu family's future, and to thank the great Ming Empire for their kindness to their ancestors, this risk was worth taking. That was why Mu Tsung appeared here. That was why he said those words. But in reality, his little heart was pounding rapidly. He was even prepared to die for a noble cause. Even if he died, he couldn't fall into Yang Chendong's hands and let Bugnam of Gojoseon use him to threaten his royal father. Mu Tsung carefully observed everyone. At this moment, everyone was seriously considering Mu Tsung's words. As he said, they really didn't have any other choice now. Disregarding everything else, it was indeed as the other party had said, they had no way out. If they couldn't take down Yunnan Manor and rescue Zhu Huiqiang before the 5-star army's main force arrived, then they really wouldn't have a place to live in the future. Could they rescue Zhu Huiqiang just by taking down Yunnan Manor? Who knew if this person was alive or dead, or had fallen into Yang Chendong's hands? If it was the latter, they probably wouldn't be able to find Zhu Huiqiang even if they took down Yunnan Manor. In that case, what was the point of taking down Yunnan Manor? At the end of the day, they were determined to attack Southern Cloud Manor just to find a boss for themselves. In a place like the Great Ming Dynasty, where everything was particular about status, without Zhu Huihua's protection, their existence was unreasonable and everyone had the right to punish them. This also meant that their existence would not last long. But now, things were different. Mu Tsung was here. They had another choice, which was to become Sheeping King's subordinates. That way, they would have a backer, and they would also have a name. Just as Mu Tsung had said, Sheeping Wang was from the Southern Ming Dynasty. Yang Chendong was only a king with a different surname from the Great Ming Dynasty. If he dared to attack King Sheeping, he would be making an enemy out of the Southern Ming Empire. That would be a great disrespect, and he would lose in terms of innate ability. As for the matter of surrendering, no one even considered it. Their previous actions had already offended the 5-star army. Surrendering to them would only bring shame to themselves. Therefore, there was only one option left, which was to seek refuge with King Sheeping. The generals quickly made a decision in their hearts. In their eyes, the reason why they were willing to obey Zhu Huihua's orders was because he was a king personally conferred by the great Ming dynasty. Now that they had a better choice, Zhu Huihua's life and death had nothing to do with them. I'm willing to pledge my loyalty to King Shiping. The first to think it through was Rajiv. He was originally a general of the Binjgrad kingdom. Now that the kingdom was destroyed, he had no other choice. After Rajiv took the lead, Luo Guan, Wu Yingtu, Azad, Huck, and the others also expressed their loyalty to Mu Tsong one by one. All right. Mu Tsong stood up excitedly. After all, he was only a 17-year-old youth. Even if he was shrewd, there was a limit to it. Seeing that he had achieved his goal, of course, he would be excited. Young master, I wonder what King Shiping wants us to do next? It was Rajiv who asked, but his attitude was very humble. It seemed like young master Mu Tsong was the leader in the absence of King Shiping. At this moment, not only Rajiv, but the other generals also looked at Mu Tsong, waiting for his answer. Ahem. After clearing his throat, Mu Tsong raised his head higher and spoke more forcefully. Everyone, thank you for believing in my father. Don't worry. Since everyone has made a wise choice, you will be part of King Shiping's residence in the future. You will also be part of the Southern Ming dynasty. Even if we can't defeat the 5-star army in the future, as long as we withdraw from the battlefield in time, the 5-star army won't dare to do anything to you, because you have the powerful Great Ming dynasty behind you. Yes, yes. Everyone nodded like chickens pecking at rice. This was the result they wanted. Speaking of this, it had to be said that the Great Ming dynasty was still a colossal existence in everyone's mind. Whether it was territory, army, or economic strength, the Southern Ming dynasty and Baiming were not small countries that could be compared to them. There were even a lot of rumors that the 5-star army was invincible and destroyed countries wherever they went, but they didn't seem to have any conflicts with the Great Ming dynasty. Even though Baiming had caused trouble for the 5-star army several times, they only focused on defense. All of this seemed to indicate that the 5-star army was strong, but they were not a match for the Great Ming dynasty. The reason why the Great Ming dynasty didn't really attack the 5-star army was because they were all Han and had the same ancestry. Secondly, the Great Ming dynasty's national policy was that they wouldn't attack unless they were attacked. The 5-star army respected the Great Ming dynasty, so everyone was at peace with each other. Otherwise, if the Southern Ming dynasty or Baiming really wanted to attack, the 5-star army wouldn't be a match for them. Once this saying spread, it was seen as a golden rule by many people, especially since the 5-star army didn't come out to deny it. It was seen as the truth by many people. Therefore, to be able to join the King of Shiping's army was very tempting for Rajiv and the others. Back to the main topic, after getting Rajiv and the others to surrender, Mu Tsong told them the result of his discussion with his father. Everyone, my father's intention is to take advantage of the fact that we have the advantage of military strength and take down Yunnan Prefecture before the 5-star army's reinforcements arrive. We need to prove to the Southern Ming dynasty that we are strong. Only then can we get more support from the imperial court. At the same time, it's also a warning to Yang Chendong not to provoke us. Otherwise, he won't be able to bear the consequences. Well said. Rajiv and the others immediately cheered when they heard this. They had just joined the King of Shiping's army and urgently needed an opportunity to prove themselves. Taking down Yunnan Prefecture was the best way to prove themselves. With such a simple idea, everyone reached a consensus. This was exactly what Mu Tsong wanted. Under the premise that they had the same goal, the next step was to discuss the next military plan. The siege had to continue. Not only that, they also had to think of a plan to deal with the 5-star army's reinforcements. The generals began to use their talents and discussed. On the tower of Yunnan Prefecture, the 3 provincial armies had stopped attacking for half an hour. In the 3 provincial palaces in the city, Yang Chendong's expression didn't change after he heard Ba Daojiang's report. 6th young master, do you think they're not going to retreat? Ba Daojiang asked again when he didn't get a response. Obviously, he wanted to learn more. Yang Chendong admired Ba Daojiang very much. This person was very uncouth, but because of this, he was very loyal. Moreover, he had followed Yang Chendong for more than 10 years and had performed well. The Black Cavalry was about to be expanded. When the time came, the position of a captain would be set in stone. Yang Chendong naturally nurtured such a talent. After glancing at Ba Daojiang, Yang Chenong said, "Whether they escape or not, their ending won't change. Since they're enemies with the 5-star army, they're our enemies. Unless they surrender, they won't be able to escape our pursuit even if they run to the ends of the earth." Magnanimous, Ba Daojiang couldn't help but praise after hearing this. Yang Chenong gave everyone the impression that no matter how big the problem was, he wouldn't care about it, and he could solve any problem easily. With such an omnipotent, capable, and invincible leader, what was there to be afraid of? The only thing to be afraid of was that the enemy would be scared and there wouldn't be a big battle to fight. In the face of Ba Daojiang, who was thirsty for knowledge, Yang Chendong certainly wouldn't just say that. He thought for a moment and said, "Actually, what the 3 provincial armies will do is no longer the young master's concern. What I'm thinking about now is where the king of Sheeping went. It's impossible for him not to hear about such a big thing. It's strange that he hasn't done anything yet. As the saying goes, there must be a demon behind this. This is the person we need to guard against." Yang Chendong's words stunned Ba Daojiang. "Sixth young master, do you mean that our biggest enemy is the king of Sheeping?" "For now, yes. After all, an enemy who doesn't make a move is the scariest. Once he makes a move, and we know his purpose, there's nothing to be afraid of." How about this? Send someone to inform Beta Persei and tell him to be careful. Also, tell Yang San to keep an eye on the city. The Mu family has been living in Yunnan Prefecture for generations. No one knows how strong his hidden forces are here. There's no harm in being on guard.
Yes.
Ba Daojiang's expression became a lot more serious after hearing this. He had already understood the meaning behind Yang Chendong's words. The most threatening king of Sheeping had not made a move until now. It was very likely that he was planning something in the dark. This was what they needed to guard against the most. While everyone's attention was still on the city defense battle, Yang Chendong had already seen the bigger picture. Ba Daojiang felt that he still needed to learn to be vigilant in times of peace. He needed to learn to be vigilant all the time. Chapter 1590. Just as Yang Chenong thought, a group of people were having a gathering in a rather large courtyard in the southern Cloud Manor. The courtyard was filled with people. If one looked carefully, one would see that their waists were bulging and they were all carrying weapons. At this moment, there was no one else other than the 3 great clans in Yunnan who could rise up such a force in the city. The 3 great clans of Yunnan referred to clans that had a certain amount of power and wealth. There were many forces like this in the entire Great Ming Dynasty, as big as the capital city of the Northern Ming Dynasty and the capital city of the Southern Ming Dynasty. Such forces existed in small towns. This was what people often called the Sure family group. It could also be called the tyrant. Speaking of aristocratic groups, they were not only in the Great Ming Dynasty, but also in other countries. Yang Chendong's method of dealing with them was very direct. If words had to be used to describe it, it would be 4 words: uprooting them. Yes, uprooting them. No matter what kind of background they had or what kind of backing they had, even their country would be destroyed. So why would they care about a small force like yours? If you know what's good for you, take out 90% of your wealth, and we can spare your lives. However, you can't stay where you were before. You will have to move out like most people. This is also the best way to reduce their influence. On the other hand, if they encountered people who wanted money more than their lives, they would be killed. The money would directly go to Yang Xie's treasury and could be used to fill the treasury, making it much simpler. It was precisely because of this that without the existence of the so-called aristocrats, the security of the land occupied by Yang Xie quickly stabilized. After all, there was no one to organize them to resist the Han army, which was equivalent to having no opponents. All this time, Yang Chendong had dealt with the aristocrats of foreign races. He had not directly come into contact with the aristocrats of the Han. South Cloud Manor was the first town that the Yang faction had conquered. Naturally, some of the problems that had been hidden under the surface were exposed. Yunnan Manor was the capital of Yunnan. To be able to be called one of the 3 great clans, their influence was not something that ordinary small clans could compare to. Usually, they were in a competitive relationship. After all, the market was only so big. The more you did, the less you would get. So usually, they hated each other to death. But now, Because they had a common goal, they were united. There was no such thing as an eternal friend in the world, only eternal benefits. The so-called three great clans were the Qin clan, Wang clan, and Li clan. Speaking of which, these three families all had a close relationship with the king of the three provinces, Zhu Huixin. They were either related to him by blood, affection, or direct interests. Let's put it this way. The reason why these three clans were able to grow so big was all thanks to Zhu Huixin's daily care. The reason why these three families were able to grow so big was because they had a very good relationship with the Mu family, who was previously known as the King of Yunnan. Now that Zhu Huixin's whereabouts were unknown, the three families did not know that the three provincial kings had been captured by Yang Chendong. That was why they didn't make a move until they received Wang Mubin's letter. Only then did they have a clear direction. Now, they gathered together for this meeting to discuss how to gain benefits in this chaotic world. Merchants didn't like chaotic times, and so did nobles. Although this represented an opportunity, it also represented killing intent. After all, they could make up for it in the future if they made less money, but if they lost their lives, they would lose everything. However, they only had money and a little power. It was impossible for them to stop the general trend, let alone the powerful five-star army. Therefore, when chaos came, they could only watch it first. Just as they were thinking about whether they should meet Yang Chendong and sound him out, King Shiping's letter arrived. The three families all received the letter, and the content was almost the same. King Shiping asked them to join forces to create chaos in the city and act as spies for them to counterattack Yunnan Prefecture. The letter also stated that Yang Chendong's daily behavior was quite cruel to the nobles. If the three families did not cooperate, they could only leave 10% of their wealth and get out of Yunnan Prefecture. It was this letter that completely made the three families make a choice, which was to become enemies with Yang Chendong. After all, their roots were in Yunnan Prefecture, and they owned a lot of land and industries here. If they could take away their industries, what about their land? Therefore, once they really left this place, it meant that they would lose a lot. This was absolutely the same as taking away their lives. No one was willing to give up everything. Take out the foundation that generations of their family had worked hard for decades, or even hundreds of years. If they did that, they would not be able to see their ancestors after death. Since they didn't want to surrender, the only way left was to fight with their lives on the line. Fortunately, the main force of the five-star army had not yet entered the city, so they still had a chance. Especially with King Shiping outside the city, it seemed that they had a high chance of winning. The three families sat together. The heads of the three families, Qin Inkong, Wang Shufu, and Li Jiayin, sat facing each other in the innermost secret room in the courtyard. Since the three families had made a decision, the next step was to see how much strength they could contribute. Qin Inkong was the first to speak. The Qin family can organize a team of 1,000 people. The Wang family can organize a team of 800 people. The Li family can also organize a team of 800 people. Wang Shufu and Li Jiayin also expressed their opinions one after another. For a big family like theirs, it was not difficult to gather such a number of people with guards and some workers. Moreover, the Great Ming dynasty did not prohibit weapons from being sold in the market. It only prohibited armor from being sold in the market, so weapons were not a problem for them. With the strength of nearly 3,000 people in hand, the three heads of the big families looked at each other with a faint expression of excitement. They knew that once this matter was completed, they would definitely be great contributors. Their achievements in the future would definitely be greater than now. If they could even capture or even kill Bugnam of Gojoseon alive, it was very likely that they would be heavily rewarded by the imperial court of the Southern Ming dynasty. That's right, the target of the three families was Yang Chendong, which was the original king residence of the three provinces where he was now. At this time, the defense of the king residence of the three provinces could be said to be extremely weak. All the forces that could be used were sent to the city tower to guard the city. This caused the defense of the king residence to be less than 1/10 of the usual. This was the time for them to attack. Under a surprise attack, with the advantage of numbers, it was very likely that they would succeed. If that was the case, not only would the king of Shiping thank them, but the emperor of the Southern Ming dynasty would also thank them. After all, Yang Chendong's existence was a huge threat to everyone. With the soldiers in hand, the next step was to discuss the invasion plan. Based on the three families' understanding of the Southern Cloud Prefecture, they quickly formulated an invasion route to ensure that the army would be placed outside the king residence of the three provinces without attracting any attention and launch a fatal attack. Since there was time, the three heads then went to make arrangements. For example, the distribution of weapons and raising of morale required time. Therefore, they set the time for the attack to be 4 hours later, which was before noon. Yang Chendong was completely unaware of all this. Not only did he not know, but Yang San also did not receive any news. Compared to the three families that had been in the Southern Cloud Prefecture for many years, Yang San's security bureau was considered an outsider. It was not difficult for them to hide some things. At this time, Yang San also received Yang Chendong's instructions. Then, he arranged for scouts to go outside the city. Since the young master said that the king of Sheeping was likely to be here, of course, he would go and find out where the king of Sheeping was. Yang San was on the move, but at this time, the army of the three provinces outside the city had a bigger military operation, which was to ambush the first reinforcements of the five-star army, which was the troops of Yao Yingjun from Guizhou province. Taking advantage of the fact that they were the closest, Yao Yingjun persuaded Jiang Wuqing to surrender and led 20,000 troops straight to Southern Cloud Prefecture. The vanguard general of this army was Jiang Wuqing. He led 5,000 cavalrymen and rushed to the front line. Since Jiang Wuqing had made the decision to surrender to the five-star army, of course, he wanted to perform well. Therefore, he gathered all the war horses and formed a team of 5,000 cavalrymen in order to be the first reinforcements to appear outside Southern Cloud Prefecture. In this way, it would be impossible for Yang Chendong not to remember him. They were determined to perform well. The closer they were to Southern Cloud Prefecture, the faster the cavalrymen moved. Gradually, they pulled away from Yao Yingjuan's 15,000 infantrymen and appeared at the place where the Mu family set up an ambush. After Rajiv and the others decided to surrender to the king of Sheeping, the army of the three provinces was changed to the Mu family army. In a short period of time, they changed their name again. Originally, they were called the Bengal Army, then the Three Provinces Army, and now they were called the Mu Family Army. Perhaps it was because the name was changed too frequently that everyone simply did not care. After the name change, Mu Tsong was given the authority to lead the troops. He first arranged for Angela and Miao Ying to continue to lead the troops to attack Southern Cloud Prefecture. He asked them to create a commotion to confuse the five-star army. Next, he brought Luo Guan, Azad, and Huck along with their 20,000 soldiers to set up an ambush on the official road from Tujing Prefecture to Southern Cloud Prefecture. This time, Mu Bin had made a good plan. He had only sent out 10,000 soldiers, but he had used righteousness to recruit more than 50,000 helpers. In this battle, no matter if he won or lost, he would not suffer too much loss. He could even take the opportunity to weaken the strength of these surrendered generals. Wasn't that perfect? He only had 10,000 soldiers, while Rajiv and the others had more than 50,000 soldiers. If the other party wanted to rebel against him, wouldn't he have no way to stop them? Now, whether it was a siege or an ambush, it was a good way to weaken the enemy's strength. When Rajiv and the others don't have enough troops, they would trust Zhao Hai more and be more obedient. Chapter 1591. Meanwhile, Mu Tsong had brought 20,000 soldiers to the edge of the forest. The 20,000 soldiers entered the forest beside the official road and drew their bows. They were ready to attack at any time. This was the first battle after joining Sheeping. Everyone wanted to perform well to raise their status. The three generals all wanted to perform well. They were all on high alert. Just the scouts were sent 10 miles away just in case. Finally, less than 2 hours after the 20,000 soldiers entered the forest, the scouts at the front reported that the reinforcements from Guizhou had appeared. The 5,000 cavalry led the way. They were very fast and were less than 5 miles away from the forest. But at the same time, there was also bad news. The cavalry was too fast, separating them from the main force behind them. This ambush was destined to not be able to wipe out all of the enemies. Whatever. 5,000 cavalry is not a small force. Let's attack them first. Mu Tsong thought it was a pity, but he quickly made the decision. After all, as a general, the biggest taboo was to constantly plan. It would only cause them to lose all their advantages. Although it was cavalry, Mu Tsong was very confident in fighting 5,000 with 20,000. He was well prepared. Not only him, but his subordinates were also full of confidence. They liked to bully others with numbers because this way, their chances of winning would be higher, and their safety would be more guaranteed. Time slowly passed. The 5,000 cavalry led by Jiang Wuqing did not know there was an ambush here. Originally, they needed to send scouts to scout the forest first. However, they did not have the time now. No one knew what the situation in Yunnan Manor was like. If they could arrive earlier, they would be able to help Bugnam of Gojoseon defeat the enemy. They would be able to contribute sooner. With this thought in mind, Jiang Wuqing hated the fact that the horse he was riding was too slow. How could he do something like stopping? Just like that, the 5,000 cavalrymen entered the forest on both sides of the official road. Mu Tsong's shout came from the forest after all the cavalrymen entered. Then, the whooshing sounds of arrows rang out, accompanied by piles of boulders that suddenly piled up on the official road. The appearance of the boulders instantly cut the 5,000 cavalry into several parts. Except for 100 cavalry who ran at the back and turned to escape in time, the rest, including Jiang Wuqing, were trapped on the official road. They became live targets in the eyes of the 20,000 Mu soldiers. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. Under the continuous barrage of arrows, the cavalry who had nowhere to hide were shot one after another and fell to the ground. Jiang Wuqing was better off. Under the protection of his personal guards, he was not hit by any arrows. However, the situation had become very bad. As wave after wave of arrows were shot, the number of personal guards around him was constantly decreasing. "General, let's charge." The guards watched as their comrades were shot and died one by one. They did not even see the enemy's shadow. They could not help but feel anxious. "Charge." Everyone dismount and charge towards the mountain in the east. Of course, Jiang Wuqing knew that he had fallen into a trap. However, it was too late to say anything now. He could only place all his hopes on the road of countercharge. Want to charge? Prepare the stones. When they come, blast them back. Hee hee. In the forest, Mu Tsong was in a good mood. Seeing that he had trapped 5,000 enemy cavalry in one move, he felt like he had the power of the world in his hands. Jiang Wuqing chose to charge. He led the troops towards the dense forest in the east again and again. However, he had to retreat again and again because of the boulders rolling down. Under this repeated process, the number of soldiers around him decreased. There were less than 2,000 people left. "We surrender. Please don't kill us." Finally, some of the cavalry could not hold on any longer. They threw their weapons to the ground and squatted. Many of these people were originally from the Three Provinces Army. They believed their general Jiang Wuqing and surrendered to the 5-Star Army. At the end of the day, they didn't have any sense of identity with the 5-Star Army. Now, in order to survive, they had to surrender. So what? Kill. Don't let any of them go. Kill them all. I want them to know what will happen to the 5-Star Army if they surrender. Mu Tsong's eyes were filled with hatred as he roared. These cavalry should be the people of Shiping King. However, they first surrendered to the Three Provinces King and now to the 5-Star Army. He did not have a good impression of these people at all. The arrows did not stop. It was the same even if you dropped your weapon. Soon, hundreds of people were killed by the arrows. This made the kneeling people realize that surrendering was not a wise choice. "Let's fight. Pick up your weapons. We have no way out." No one knew who shouted, but the cavalry soldiers who had turned into infantry stood up one by one. At this moment, their eyes were red as they shouted and rushed into the forest with all their might. However, sometimes, you can't risk your life just because you want to. It also depends on whether the opponent gives you the chance. Boulders continued to roll down from the dense forest, accompanied by arrows. Few people who rushed into the forest could return alive. After repeating this twice, the injured Jiang Wuqing realized that there were less than 500 people around him who could fight. 5,000 turned into 500. In less than an hour, he knew that he was going to lose this time. Because he charged too quickly, he did not even have the chance to wait for reinforcements. "Soldiers, this general has let everyone down. I will atone for my sins with my death. Come, let's launch the final charge together." Jiang Wuqing held a spear in his hand. His face was ashen. In his heart, he prayed that Yao Yingjun must treat his family well. This was his last hope before his death. Then, he led the soldiers to charge. Battle cries rang out. However, because of the harsh terrain, it did not take long for the cries to stop. Jiang Wuqing fell on the path of the charge. He was hit by 4 arrows. One of the arrows hit his chest and took his life. 5,000 cavalry were left here just like that. This gave Mu Tsong and the others great confidence. The 5-star army is only SOSO. Since we can defeat them once, we can defeat them a second time, a third time. Ha ha ha. Mu Tsong shouted as if he was crying with joy. The ambush in the dense forest severely injured Yao Yingjun's troops who came to help. When he heard the cavalry report that the cavalry had set up an ambush in the dense forest, he was really shocked. He immediately sent out scouts to inquire about the situation. Then, he sent a telegram to Yang Chendong. The general meaning was that the situation had changed. Their reinforcements might not be able to arrive on time. He asked for Bugnam of Gojoseon's understanding. And before this telegram was sent to Yang Chendong, the situation in Yunnan Manor changed. First, Rajiv and Wu Yingtu led more than 30,000 troops to launch a crazy siege. They quickly attracted the attention of the city guards. Under the fierce attack, the West Gate was in danger. Beta Persei had no choice but to send reinforcements from the other 3 gates. There was nothing wrong with this move, but this was exactly what Shiping King Mubin wanted. He already knew that Yang Chendong was good at bewitching people. It was obviously not feasible to take down Yunnan Manor from the front. So, he planned to sneak into the city. As long as he could succeed, the 10,000 troops he led would become the main force. When the time came, it would be no problem to take down the 3 provinces. For this plan, he had already sent a message to the 3 major families in the city. He asked them to send some people to the East Gate and cooperate with him to lead the army into the city. The 3 major families had already bet their lives on Shiping King. Naturally, they would cooperate with him. First, they sent 1,000 people to the vicinity of the prince's mansion in the 3 provinces and secretly controlled all the exits there to prevent Yang Chendong from escaping. Then, more than 1,000 people suddenly appeared after transferring troops from the East Gate to the West Gate. More than 1,000 guards from the 3 major families, armed with various weapons, still had some fighting power. The most important thing was that the timing of their appearance was too good. They caught the soldiers guarding the East Gate by surprise. Only 1,000 people and 500 surrendered troops were responsible for guarding this place. Even Beta Persei did not leave any main force here. He focused all his energy on guarding the West Gate. This gave the enemy an opportunity to take advantage of. The battle ended very quickly. The East City Gate was breached in less than a quarter of an hour due to the fact that their military strength and combat prowess were inferior to the enemy's. Then, the East Gate opened from the inside. The 10,000 Mu family troops outside the city suddenly appeared and jumped in. The East Gate was broken, and a large number of Mu family troops rushed into the city. However, they did not rush to the West Gate. Instead, their target was the 3 provinces' palaces in the city. When the news was passed from the defeated soldiers to the West Gate, Beta Persei was really shocked. Quick, quick, pick 10,000 people to go to the 3 provinces' palaces to protect the young master's safety. Where is Chenghu? I'll leave the battle here to you. You must guard this place no matter what. Beta Persei called Chenghu and ordered him while mobilizing the troops. This was Beta Persei, who had followed Yang Chendong to fight in the north and south, had already developed a certain momentum and did not appear to be flustered. Yes, second brother, don't worry. As long as Chenghu is still here, the West Gate will not be lost. Chenghu patted his chest and promised. Then, he watched Beta Persei lead the 10,000 soldiers into the city. The 3 provinces' palaces. Shouts suddenly sounded outside. Dao Xiao and Ba Daojiang also quickly appeared in front of Yang Chendong. When they reported the situation outside, they also asked if they needed to retreat to another place. The reason why the Black Cavalry was called elite was not only because they were well-trained and well-equipped, but more importantly because of their fearless spirit. How could such an army be flustered by the sudden appearance of the enemy? Chapter 1592. How's everyone's rest? Yang Chendong asked calmly. Although Mu Bin's move was beyond his expectations, with Datsang in his hands, there was nothing in this world that he was afraid of. The so-called everyone was naturally referring to the Black Cavalry. They had been fighting for days and fired countless shots. Their bodies had reached a point of fatigue, and they had lost a certain amount of combat power the day before. Fortunately, they had not been given any tasks for the day, so they were able to rest well. Although they had not fully recovered, they had at least recovered 70 to 80% of their combat power. It would not be a problem for them to join the battle again. Everyone has rested enough. Please give the order, sixth young master. Dao Xiao and Ba Dao Jiang stood at attention and said confidently, "All right, since that's the case, I'll distribute the weapons. Whether or not we can defend this place will depend on the Black Cavalry." Yang Chendong looked at Dao Xiao and Ba Dao Jiang with trust in his eyes. They had not taken a single step back when they were surrounded by Zhu Huiqiu. Now, Shiping King had come in a hurry. What was there to be afraid of? Yang Chendong believed in the 500 Black Cavalry under him, but he believed in himself even more.
Yes.
Dao Xiao and Ba Dao Jiang saluted again. When they left the palace, they were filled with confidence. The 3 gates of the 3 provincial palaces had already been surrounded by the 3 great families. When they couldn't figure out the situation in the manner, they didn't rashly launch an attack. Instead, they continuously poured the kerosene that they had prepared onto the courtyard walls. Then, they tossed a match into the air, and a raging fire began to burn. The poor palaces of the 3 provinces were about to experience another fire in just one day. Under the fire, the air became hot and dry. Visibility was also affected. The 3 great families took the opportunity to attack. The guards of the 3 great clans had long been prepared for this. Every one of them had a wet blanket draped over their bodies. They kicked open the door that had already lost its frame due to the fire and loudly shouted as they charged into the courtyard. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Concentrated gunshots rang out, and after a sweep, the first few hundred guards who rushed into the courtyard fell into a pool of blood. When the others saw that the situation was not good, they hurriedly retreated. Ba Dao Jiang, who was in charge of the first line of defense, was busy reloading his Type 95 rifle as he spoke with a look of disdain. "You're delusional enough to think that you can take on our Black Cavalry with such little ability. You really don't know how to write the word death." They had lost nearly half of their men in a single charge. The patriarchs of the 3 great clans had ugly expressions on their faces. They finally knew why the 3 provincial kings were defeated by the 5-star army in their own territories. With such a tyrannical firearm, Zhu Huiqiu's defeat was not a loss. Just as they were lamenting, Wang Mubin of Shiping finally arrived with his troops. After understanding the basic situation, he ordered them to continue attacking without hesitation. Although doing this would result in a huge loss, Mubin had no other choice. If he couldn't quickly take down the 3 provinces' king's palaces and capture Yang Chendong, he might be surrounded by the 5-star army. Mubin gave the order to attack, and at the same time, promised a high position and generous salary. Anyone who could capture Yang Chendong alive or find his corpse would be promoted by 3 ranks and rewarded with 10,000 taels of silver. Generous rewards would attract brave men, and there were many people who would sacrifice their lives for money. Not to mention, on the surface, they seemed to have the upper hand. At that moment, the main gate, side gate, and back gate were filled with battle cries. The less than 500 Black Cavalry needed to defend these 3 gates, and suddenly, the pressure on them increased. The greatest damage of firearms came from their intimidation. When no one was afraid of firearms, they needed to show their killing power. However, the Black Cavalry had less than 500 men, and they were facing more than 10,000 opponents. The pressure was unimaginable. "Young master, let's break out of the encirclement." Dao Xiao appeared in front of Yang Chendong for the second time, and his face was filled with anxiety. The 3 provincial kings' residences were too big, and the surrounding walls were already several miles long. It was impossible for the less than 500 Black Cavalry to defend this place and ensure that no one could break in. For the sake of Yang Chendong's safety, breaking out of the encirclement was the best plan. "No need." Yang Chendong rejected and waved his hand. This was the three provincial kings' residences, and it was no longer the courtyard that he lived in before. If this place was breached, then the people in the city would lose their backbone. If someone instigated the people, whether it was the people defending the city or the surrendered soldiers, they could be used. At that time, it was not impossible for them to turn around and attack. If that was the case, before the main force arrived, they could only retreat from Yunnan Prefecture. In this way, if they wanted to take over this place, they would have to pay a higher price. It would also give others the impression that the five-star army was only SOSO, and that they could be defeated. That would be the real problem. If they were dealing with other foreign nations, Yang Chendong might have chosen to retreat. After all, it was not shameful to run away if you could not win. However, this was the territory of the Han people. If they retreated this time, it would be equivalent to losing the hearts of the people. If they wanted to take over this place, the price they would have to pay would be too high, and the number of people who would have to die would only increase. This was not something that Yang Chendong wanted to happen. Therefore, Yang Chendong could not retreat at this time. Dao Xiao, you can withdraw a certain amount of the defensive line, give up on the outer courtyard, and just defend the inner courtyard. As for other things, don't worry about them. Yang Chendong had already made a decision. Since the Black Cavalry was having a hard time defending, it was time for him to make a move. Although Dao Xiao still wanted to say something, since it was an order from his master, he had no reason to object. He agreed and went to arrange it. After he left, Yang Chendong's body flashed and entered the large warehouse. A row of neatly arranged firearms appeared in front of him. What should he use? If there were no Black Cavalry here, Yang Chendong could use the V-10 helicopter to kill everyone. If there were no Black Cavalry here, Yang Chendong could also use a tank with thick armor to kill the enemies. However, it was clear that there were Black Cavalry here. If he summoned these things, how would he explain it? Most importantly, the current situation was not a matter of life and death. Forget it. The image of Sylvester Stallone in The First Blood flashed across his mind. Yang Chendong chose a Type 95.5, 8mm caliber machine gun from the large warehouse. Type 95.5, 8mm caliber machine gun. The empty weight of the gun was 3.95 kilograms, 840 millimeters long, and had a range of 600 meters. It was loaded with either 30 bullets or 75 bullets. It was a powerful killing weapon. Yang Chendong took off his coat, put on a bulletproof vest, Kevlar on his head, and military boots on his feet. After his body was covered with bullets, Yang Chendong reappeared in the main hall. Come on, let's fight. In a flash, Yang Chendong rushed out of the main hall. With his master-level skills and combat power, he nimbly headed for the outer courtyard. Outside the three provincial palaces, as the fire burned, reinforcements arrived in batches. The first to arrive were nearly 300 members of the Langya Special Forces. Previously, they had been cooperating with Yang San to investigate the situation in the city. Unfortunately, although their skills were not bad and each of them had unique skills, they were still unfamiliar with the city and had been taken advantage of by the three great clans. When they heard that the three big families had cooperated with Shiping Wang to take down the West City Gate and headed towards the three provinces, the members of the Iron Tiger team roared in anger. This was simply a provocation to the Wolf Fang Special Forces. This was something that they could not tolerate. Bring your weapons and set out. Kill whoever you see. No one is allowed to live. Iron Tiger was ruthless. Although the opponent this time was also Han, they dared to harm the sixth young master. In their eyes, they were already aliens and could only die. The second batch of reinforcements was the secret agents of the Security Bureau led by Yang San. There were not many of them, only about 300 or so. There were also many non-operational personnel, but when Yang Chendong was in danger, what they had to do was to kill. Whether they could kill or not, they had to kill. The third batch of reinforcements was the 10,000 soldiers led by Beta Persei. However, due to the distance, it would take a lot of time to reach the palace. The sound of gunfire continued in the palace, and the attack continued. Because there were too many places to defend, the number of people was obviously insufficient. The Black Cavalry began to retreat from the outer palace to the inner palace. However, there was another figure who was the opposite of them. He was moving from the inner palace to the outer palace. He was Yang Chendong, who was covered in ammunition. Although the equipment on his body weighed dozens of kilograms, it did not hinder his movements at all. He easily leaped over the 2-meter-high wall with a single run. This was one of the benefits given to him since he transmigrated. He was originally a soldier king in his previous life, so his physical fitness was extremely strong. After the enhancement in this life, he was already invincible. After jumping over 2 walls and brushing past the black cavalry, he finally saw the first batch of opponents. This was a group of about 50 guards. Go to hell. Without any superfluous words, Yang Chendong raised his gun and fired. At this time, someone who could come to the palace of the 3 provinces with a sword in hand and an aggressive look was not an enemy. He really couldn't imagine who it could be. A magazine of bullets shot out as if they had eyes, not giving any opponent time to react. The sound of gunfire rang out, and their bodies fell to the ground. One after another, the team of 50 people only changed a magazine before they all died. Whoosh! With a flash of his figure, Yang Chendong had already left this place. His massacre had only just begun. In the later years, there were similar scenes in some movies and TV series, but they were often questioned by the so-called experts and beasts. How could a person fight against 10, 100, or even 1,000 people? This was simply unscientific. However, when they saw a hero confronting a regiment or even a division in a Western movie, they often opened their mouths and praised it, saying how realistic it was. Chapter 1593. They really don't know what to say about this kind of completely polar evaluation criteria. Don't they know that in real history, the Battle of Hubudagon? How glorious it was! In the first year of the Jin state, Liao Tianqing's 5th year, 1115. In the Jin, Liao War, the Jin army chased and defeated the main force of the Liao army in the strategic decisive battle at Hubudagon. The Jin army defeated the Liao army with 20,000 troops. The Liao army was defeated and many died. Defeating 700,000 people with 20,000 happened in the era of cold weapons. Yang Chendong was equipped with modern firearms and had the physical condition of a master. Under the endless supply of bullets, it was normal for him to create miracles. 1 man and 1 gun strode out of the mansion, and wave after wave of guards died under the muzzle of his gun. After the power of the guards was almost destroyed, the Mu army appeared. They were all wearing the same military uniform and armor, which made them look majestic and awe-inspiring. But it was useless. In the face of Yang Chendong, who was holding a heavy machine, they were only sending themselves to death. With great difficulty, a few people shot arrows at Yang Chendong, but they were also dodged by his agile figure. Occasionally, a bow and arrow pierced Yang Chendong's body, but it was blocked by the bulletproof vest and did not cause the slightest harm. Facing the elite forces of the Mu army, Yang Chendong's gun sounded again, and the enemies fell to the ground one after another. They couldn't imagine until they died that they, who claimed to be elites, couldn't even defeat an opponent with so many people. Of course, it was not that they didn't encounter danger. After all, so many Mu army had rushed into the mansion. But those who came into close contact with Yang Chendong were either killed by his heavy machine gun or thrown aside by his magical steps. Those who finally had a chance to attack were still dodged by Yang Chendong. Along the way, he was like a human-shaped woodcutter. Wherever he went, there were enemy corpses everywhere, and most of them were corpses that were smashed by heavy machine guns. In the excitement of killing, Yang Chendong rushed to wherever there were more people. Ever since Yang Chendong brought Datsang to the great Ming dynasty, he had never felt so satisfied with killing as he did this time. Unlike the last time when he dealt with Yes Hin, he was forced to fight. This time, he chose to take the initiative. His goal was to kill people and capture King Shiping. Yes, Yang Chendong's goal was King Shiping. Since this person schemed against him, if he didn't fight back, wouldn't it be a waste of the saying that politeness demands reciprocity? Based on his intuition, King Shiping, Yang Chendong went all the way from the inner courtyard to the outer mansion, and then went straight to the gate of the mansion of the 3 provinces. At this time, the Mu army's army was all ready. Previously, they had the advantage of numbers. Although they were facing the black cavalry with firearms, due to the limited number of people and the fact that there were too many places to defend, they still found a loophole and killed their way in. However, with Yang Chendong's attack, he turned the situation around with his own strength. As more and more people died in the charge, the Mu army could no longer be seen on the road from the main gate to the mansion of the three provinces. Even so, Yang Chendong was still charging out. He had a feeling that if King Shiping was outside, he must be near the main gate. After all, he was a king. He was always concerned about his reputation. It would be very embarrassing to let such a person leave through the side gate or the back gate. Therefore, Yang Chendong only had one direction to go, and that was the main gate. What's going on? Why is there no movement? Outside the main gate, as Yang Chendong expected, Mu Bin was there. However, at this moment, there was a puzzled expression on his face. Just a moment ago, there were still waves of battle cries in his ears. But why was there no movement at this moment? There were three families in Yunnan Mansion. Among them, Qin Kong was responsible for attacking the back gate. Wang Shufu was responsible for attacking the side gate. And only Li Jiayin was left to accompany Mu Bin at the main gate. Suddenly, there was no movement at the main gate, and the head of the Li family was also puzzled. However, even King Shiping, Mu Bin, could not figure out why. So how could he figure it out? Many people were surprised by the silence at the main gate. At this time, the experienced veterans had already grasped the long saber or sword in their hands tightly. They had a feeling that there must be something strange going on. They were afraid that something had happened that they did not know. Just when everyone was still scratching their heads in confusion, Yang Chendong's figure finally appeared outside the main entrance. As soon as Yang Chendong appeared, more than a dozen arrows flew in front of him. Yang Chendong dodged most of them, but there were still 2 arrows stuck in his body. However, they were only stuck in his body. As Yang Chendong's body shook, the 2 arrows stuck in his bulletproof vest fell to the ground. At this moment, his face was also revealed in front of everyone. Bug Nam of Gojoseon? Mu Bin's eyesight was very good, and he immediately recognized Yang Chendong's identity. The corner of his mouth opened, revealing 2 neat rows of teeth. Yang Chendong laughed and said, "You are King Mu Bin of Shiping?" "That's me." Although Mu Bin's eyes were full of surprise, because he did not expect Yang Chendong to take the initiative to appear, and only one person, he was more excited. This is Yang Chendong, the Bugnam of Gojoseon. Whether it is the Beiming Emperor or the Southern Ming Emperor, they both regarded him as a mortal danger. God knows how many times the 2 emperors thought about beheading this person in public, but they couldn't do it. And now, the opportunity has come to him. Doesn't this mean that his chance to make a great contribution has come? Men, capture him and reward him handsomely. In his excitement, Mu Bin naturally said. In fact, without him saying anything, the soldiers around him had already jumped out and rushed toward Yang Chendong, who was standing there alone. Go to hell. The muzzle of the heavy machine gun in his hand was raised, and there was a burst of gunshots. The more than 10 Mu family soldiers who rushed up were shot into sieves one by one, and they fell to the ground covered in blood. Even when they died, they couldn't close their eyes. The heavy machine gun's firing speed was too fast, and they didn't even have time to react. With a burst of gunshots, more than 10 people were killed. This scene also shocked the Mu family soldiers in front of the main gate, but they relied on the advantage of numbers and weren't too afraid. After all, Yang Chendong was only one person, and he only had one gun. Could he really kill hundreds of people present? Continue to go. If you can't catch him alive, then catch him dead, Mu Bin said as he took a few steps back. In this kind of dangerous situation, he wouldn't foolishly rush to the front. After receiving the order, the Mu family's troops on the left and right continued to rush forward. Even the dozens of guards, led by Li Jiayin, also rushed forward with a loud shout. But everyone knows that this is the time to make a great contribution. Even if it's a little risk of death, it seems to be worth it. Good. Yang Chendong's expression didn't change. On the contrary, his eyes lit up a little. He was worried that these people would turn around and run away. In that case, it would be difficult for him to make everyone stay with his strength alone. But if they want to rush up, that's what he wants. Tut tut tut, tut tut tut. The sound of heavy machine guns kept ringing. The rapid reloading that Yang Chendong had worked hard to practice now played a role. In less than a second, he could reload a new magazine. This gave people the feeling that his gun had an endless supply of ammunition. Wherever the muzzle of the gun was pointed at, soldiers fell one after another. In just a short 2 minutes, not only was no one able to hurt a single hair on Yang Chendong's body, but they also threw down more than 200 corpses. This result shocked everyone. Everyone used to only hear that Yang Xie's firearms were very powerful, but it was only very powerful. If they were really invincible in the world, then they would have already made a move on the great Ming dynasty. Why wait until now? In many people's view, Yang Xie's firearms should also have drawbacks, and as long as they relied on the advantage of numbers, it was still possible to make up for this shortcoming. In the end, everyone would be evenly matched. But now, when they saw the power of the firearms, they realized that they were too optimistic in the past. They were too ignorant. The power of the firearms was more than several times more powerful than they imagined. Seeing that so many soldiers had died in such a short period of time, Mu Bin's expression changed greatly. He was also a person who was used to seeing life and death. Over the years, he had fought countless big and small battles, but he had never seen such a powerful person. With his own strength, he had the combat power of a powerful army. Seeing that Yang Chendong still had a lot of ammunition on him, Mu Bin felt that things were not going to go well. His instincts kicked in again. He turned around and tried to escape from this place. A gentleman would not stand under a dangerous wall. Not everyone was like Yang Chendong, who was already the king and was willing to take the lead in everything. You want to escape at this time? Stay with me. Yang Chendong had been paying attention to Mu Bin all the time. This was his main target. If he let this person escape, wouldn't his appearance this time be imperfect? A smoke grenade appeared in his left hand. He held his breath and threw the smoke grenade with his left hand. Then, a second, third, and fourth smoke grenades appeared one after another. The front gate of the three provinces' king, which was originally clearly visible, was soon surrounded by a cloud of smoke and dust. They could not see each other, and they could not see each other. It was especially chaotic. During this period, there were many violent coughs, which were stimulated by the smell of the smoke grenades. Yang Chendong, who had been holding his breath for a long time, was not affected at all. Instead, he turned his body again and quickly came behind Mu Bin, who was trying to escape. Then, he reached out his left hand and grabbed at Mu Bin's neck. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.